Hello and welcome everyone. Today we are going to be showing off some EU5 gameplay, doing a run start as Venice, talking through a lot of our decision making for hopefully the first 50 years. Now for this is a sponsored video, meaning Paradox is paying me, and to be a little bit more transparent, I have very few restrictions, very few. I have to show a singular nation / can't do a tutorial, we're showing Venice. I cannot talk smack about a Paradox employee, I had no intention of doing that. I cannot base the run around bugs, although I can show bugs and I can say whatever I want about the game. And finally, the length of the video has to be, and I quote, within reason. The larger plan for the run is going to be forming Carthage, although we will not get to that today, and moving the capital on over to Tunis. The reason we chose Venice is because I think their unique content is best suited for representing Carthage in terms of getting their bonuses and moving on to forming Carthage, so let's take a look at what Venice has to offer. Venice gets a ton of trade and economic bonuses, but before we get into those, just want to make note that they also have 103 dynamic historical events, which are going to be flavor events for them, some of which confer powerful bonuses, and then we're going to take a look at some of the bonuses here in the content. Now, they do have an enormous amount of galley power bonuses, starting off with the Venetian arsenal, if built in the capital, will give 5% galley power, but is also a powerful source of sailors and shipbuilding. Here's an example of one of their trade bonuses, trade efficiency, which will give them extra money on all of their trades, which they get a lot of, we'll see in just a minute. The Venetian palaces is an interesting sort of building that I think represents a sort of decadence, and this is a big part of why we chose to play Venice for going into Carthage. You can build multiple levels, and they employ 200 nobles. This is a really large amount of nobles, and so what you get is a really big aristocratic upper class that is going to be present in the capital. However, that aristocratic upper class is actually going to contribute to the crown power, courtesy of the crown power local modifier that you are going to be getting there. So you have 10 Venetian palaces, that's plus 100% crown power, and crown power is essential for a trade nation because it scales how much trade income goes to you rather than to the estates. We also get a minus urban building cost modifier. This modifier is very powerful to stack. We will look to get it throughout the ages, making choices that allow us to get more and more of this, which will allow us to have a very big capital economy that is based on production to the extent that we are generating value not through trade, although we will get quite a bit through trade. We have more galley power, and then we will have a lot of diplomatic and cultural modifiers as well. We will kind of just skim through these. Cultural tradition, I think we have influence as well. The navy maintenance will synergize with the extra power we're getting from the galleys. We have 25% influence there on the culture as well. Influence is a little bit better than tradition, or quite a bit better. Here is the additional 10% galley power. That's 30% total galley power and heavy ship power. Generally speaking, heavy ships are going to be stronger, but they are going to be less cost efficient when you are fighting inside a sea, such as the Mediterranean here. We will also get a little bit of food production at the end. Council of 40 is a powerful government reform. Once you escape the early game, where that crown power malice is really, really nasty, and it will give you plus 25% trade capacity. But perhaps the most distinctive feature of Venice is that it starts out as a republic, and so let's jump in and see why that is going to be powerful. First up, for each government type, they will have their own unique advances or technologies, which are added to the generic tree while you have that government type. In general, Republic has strong advances, and here you can see we have the Republic icon. It is unique to the Republics, and we have one for mercenary size here, and also trade capacity here, both of which are really strong. And if we want to represent Carthage, having a lot of mercenaries is important because they had a mostly mercenary army, but the most kind of powerful aspect of this is going to be we gain access to really powerful government reforms, in this case, the Merchant Republic. We have a discount on foreign building costs, so we can build trade centers in foreign countries that are going to be cheaper. We have decreased cost on trade maintenance, which is a discount modifier. As we get more of this, this is going to get better and better. We have plus 50% trade capacity. Now, this is a relatively rare modifier, so this really ramps up the amount of income we can generate through trade. We are a little bit worse at, or quite a bit worse, at integrating new territories, so we have to play a little bit tall. We get this reform for free, since it gives a reform itself, allowing effectively paying for itself, and it gives us plus 25% trade income, which is just free money on top of what we get from trade, just extra cash. Now, to quickly kind of take a look at something example of the foreign building, we are going to come into the UI here, and we are going to go to trade buildings, of which we will see this trade office. This has to be built overseas in our continent, and so if we take a look where we can build it, we see we can build it in a subject. Can't build it in a lot of locations. That's because we have to have good relations. We have good relations here, though, so we could add a trade office there. And what the trade office is going to give us is going to be trade advantage, trade capacity to owner, and maritime presence, all of which will help us to build a big trade empire. So let's look at our geographic and strategic starting position. First of all, we actually have a lot of locations that dot the Mediterranean, as you can see here, but a lot of these aren't going to be useful for us. They just have a very low population, and even if they had a larger population, they don't have very much control, which throttles basically everything that is useful in a location. If they did have a large population, they actually might be a detriment to our nation because of the really low control. But as they stand now, they will be more or less trade outposts for us. We also have a couple subjects. We have Candia, we have the subject of Ragusa, and we also have the subject of Trieste. Our land we want to mainly think about as being in this little pocket here, and also we will fight Treviso, or Verona rather, early, and so we should think of this territory as being ours in terms of our starting condition. Alright, in terms of the territory we don't have very good raw materials to start, but in our early expand, we are going to maybe get access to silver, depending on how well that war goes, which is a very powerful and nice RGO. We have this province of Venetia, which is going to extend beyond our borders here, which is going to be quite useful because there's wool there. Wool will give a production bonus to textiles, which is a very valuable industry to have. Coming on over, we have relatively flat land and some wetlands. Wetlands, generally not the best thing to be having. The vegetation is going to be farmland. Farmland boosts quite a bit both your local population capacity, meaning we can build these areas tall, big cities, and also you will get more development, which helps for building more industrial cities, more buildings, and so this will be a nice area on which to have a power base. Notably, we have some rivers going on too that flow through here, which are going to be good for pushing control in this region. For our markets, we actually start out with the market capital, which is very, very useful for us because it's going to be a lot easier for us to have control of the market by having the most trade advantage in the market. And also, it's going to be useful because market access throttles how valuable everything you do is with this here. If we have a lack of market access, this means you're going to lose out on money contributing to tax base, and your production buildings will build less buildings, or fewer buildings rather. We also will have early access to this market here as well after annexing Ragusa, and it will be very easy for us to become the major trade advantage member in this market in a very short time period. Taking a look at our values, Venice actually starts in a bit of an unusual position because they have a lot of progressive values in a lot of spots, and so this is maybe worth noting. They start off with a lot of capital economy, which is going to give you both building cost reduction, which synergizes with what you get from your unique advances, but also production efficiency, which is going to be help for building an urban economy. Also for building an urban economy, we do have plutocracy, which is going to give us more burghers in towns and cities. The burghers get employed in the urban buildings, and so this is going to give us a little bit more smoothness, but also the burgher estate is going to be valuing a lot of the same stuff that we value. We start with a naval orientation as well. This is going to be something we want to maintain, and it gives us proximity costs through maritime. Generally speaking, proximity is how you have a control over your far-flung empire, and as you see here in the proximity map mode, we can project the proximity. A lot of it is going to be going overseas for us. for almost all of our starting locations, right? We are going to be traveling through sea nodes, and you can see here is where our proximity projection stops. And so we would like to generate more of this. For this, we will have to get maritime presence built up, which is going to involve us building a fleet, which all of this kind of dovetails nicely with the land versus naval, where we have the naval progress. It's also going to decrease trade range overseas, and most of our trade range, considering we start in a sea zone local province, will be going out into the Mediterranean, and so this is going to be something we like. We also start with a huge trend towards humanist, which is very unusual. This is, or a huge balance towards humanist, where we have 80 towards humanist. This is very unusual. It gives you more assimilation speed, quite strong, also helps you for accepting heretical and heathen beliefs. This is going to be something that's very valuable to us, especially if we are planning on conquering lands in Tunis, because that is a different religion over there. We would like to accept them quite a bit, and that way we will have happy pops. You know what they say, happy pops, happy life. We start a little progress towards innovative, which is also unusual and is going to help with the tech. And finally, most importantly, we start with a trend towards decentralization, which is normal, but generally speaking, this is going to be the first thing in most of your runs you try and get is a progress towards centralization, because look at this, proximity cost. This allows you to build a bigger empire, and then there's the crown power, which is going to allow us to get more trade income and is going to be very, very important for us. Unfortunately for us, we only start with 13% crown efficiency. You can see here, that means we only get 13% of the trade income we generate. Our tax income is decreased by 11%, and this is particularly nasty in a few spots. We can see what is affecting it currently, where we don't really have anything positively affecting it, and several things that are negatively affecting it. So what we are going to want to do is we are going to want to generally go after these things, even the Council of 40, which is very strong. It's just not strong in a context where we don't have available crown power yet. So we are going to want to slot out of this, and what we are going to do is probably go for religious tolerance. Generally speaking, we want something like harbor administration. This would be really nice, but we want to gain some trend towards humanist, and this is what this gives us, right? Because we want to preserve that 80 humanist, because it's really hard to generate, and so this is going to be good for us for now. So this government reform will cost us some stability, and a lot of the things we do will cost us either stability or Republican tradition, kind of in this menu for the estates. We won't get into the math, but at first blush, it might look really bad that we're giving a lot of power to the estates with estate privileges, but this has diminishing cost in terms of what it costs us in terms of crown power, because they have so many percent modifiers. It becomes the case that additional percent modifiers really don't eat into it too much. The really important thing is a lot of crown power modifiers. So what we're going to want to do is secure a trend towards both plutocracy, because currently we're trending towards aristocracy, and a trend towards capital economy with our initial privileges. We're going to be throttled by our Republican tradition, and so we're going to come into the burghers' estates and select a couple that are pushing us in the direction of plutocracy and also in the direction of the capital economy. We're going to go elite patronage. This does make our nobles a little bit less upset, or a little bit more upset, and you'll notice here, as we add these, it is going to decrease the satisfaction of our estates. We don't want to keep them too upset, and so this will be something that we are sensitive to. So we are going to give out estate or elite patronage here. We are also going to be giving out another one that is going to be giving us a trend towards capital economy, and so we will choose the guild investments here. And so now that these are put in, we will have a positive trend towards plutocracy and a positive trend towards capital economy. As long as it's positive, we will not backslide, and so these two are secure. Similarly, we want to secure a trend towards centralization. That way it will start decreasing our decentralization and moving us in this direction. This is a big priority, and the humanist is a big priority. So what we are going to do is we can kind of afford, or it looks like we can afford, only one more privilege. We don't want to get the nobles below 30. We could, but then they're probably going to rev. We would have to fight the rev, and we are also throttled by the Republican tradition, which we want to kind of keep above 50 here. So what we are going to do is we are going to put in building building roads rights, which will give monthly progress towards centralization and allow the burghers to build some roads. Now, this already secures a trend towards decentralization, but if we get this bigger, then the trend we will move much faster towards centralization, and it looks like we can't really get any more progress without upsetting the nobles too much. However, we can give the nobles privileges as well. This will make them happy as the burghers have gotten, or not quite as happy, but it'll make them happy. And we have this monetary fiefs privilege, which is going to give negative maximum tax for nobles' estate, noble levy size, and also, what we want, our progress towards centralization. Also, the power it gives them isn't too much. We have to keep in mind we do want to decrease the nobles' power because we want to get rid of the Zonta privilege, and so we're going to slot this in as well. This is going to, if we take a look at how it's going to affect satisfaction, give us a +7 towards the nobles, and so now we can probably slot in one more privilege. We will stay above 50 Republican tradition, which is kind of the threshold we want to stay above to avoid disaster, and so we will do another centralization one with the clergy for embellish great works of art, and so what we will have for ourselves is going to be a trend towards centralization of 0.17. We've already selected out a couple of cabinet actions. We want to change societal values towards humanist. You can see at base this will give us 0.1, but we also have additional cabinet efficiency, which will increase the power of this cabinet, as will appointing a cabinet member. We actually really care about the estate that these guys belong to for two reasons. One, it will give additional power to that estate, which at first blush, we said that the power is really not that important because stacking more and more of these percentages isn't important. But it is important when it is the crown. So we are going to give this one out to the crown here. And then it is also important because when you have a parliament, you get certain agendas, or you can roll particular debates. These debates are contingent on some of the conditions you have, and one of the debates we want is contingent on us having a member of the burghers' estate in our cabinet. So we will also want one burghers' estate member here. Other than that, we are employing the best men for the job, where we are getting a diplomatic guy for changing societal values, which will boost this by a total of 90%, so 190%. So this will give us 0.19 trend towards humanist, and then also for this, we are going to be strengthening government. This is going to increase our Republican tradition here and allow us to recover back up, allow us to put in more of these estate privileges, and for this guy, we do care about the military efficiency. Now, with this changing societal values, we are very much slowing the progress towards spiritualist, looking to secure kind of as much of this humanist trend as we possibly can here. But the religious tolerance, this is affected by administrative efficiency, and so this will tick up another 0.09, giving us a trend of 0.03 towards spiritualist, which is slow enough to give us time to change some laws. In particular, if we hover here, we can see all the things that are giving us trends, and the law that we want to change is we want to get off of same religion in terms of the heir religion law, probably, but we'll take a closer look at during our parliament. For our starting technology, we are going to open with organized religion. It's the one we have to research first. Don't really mind the possible clerks in towns and cities. This will help to dilute the nobles' power. And then we'll move to universal Christianity, monthly diplomats, smooth out our start considering what we want to do with our sliders. And then we will go for guilds, giving us possible burghers in towns and cities. Also give us percentage literacy on burghers, which for Venice is very nice because we will have a really high percentage of our pop as burghers relative to other nations because we are plutocratic, we have relatively low pop, we're going to urbanize, and so these things will be pushed. Let's come into the budget tab and show what we've done. We've gotten the minting so that we are net neutral. We're actually going to push a little bit beyond that, so we can roll a parliament that requires us having a little bit of inflation. That is a pretty good parliament. We're also going to automate all the taxes. In theory, you can micro to get better outcomes, but this is a little bit tedious, and we're just going to leave this right here. We are going to max out the cost of court spend, which will improve the Republican tradition we're getting. This, in turn, the main value is going to increase how much stability we can get by getting rid of this, but legislative efficiency will be nice. We will also max or completely kill the diplomatic spending slider. This notably gives us subject loyalty, not something we're pressured in, and monthly diplomats is a big value of this, but by minimizing it, we can save a bit of cash, and so we're going to be doing that. For our stability slider, we'll give a little bit of a small investment. Stability, you just want to maintain a positive value. Having it be absolutely huge is not as important as just having it above 0, because being below 0 gives some rather nasty malices. Let's talk about our initial spend and general build pattern. We're generally going to want to push urban buildings unless we get access to the silver that's over here, in which case we are really going to want to push the silver. And for this, we note that we have 5,000 burghers, so we have plenty of burghers available for employment. And also right now, before we unpause, the masonry is going to be cheap. If we look at the cost, it's being decreased by 33% because the masonry is cheap. And so we want to lock in this decrease. We know we want to mostly be building in Venice, and so we're going to sort by what's the most profitable, and we are going to build 5 of both of the 2 most profitable industries. We're not just building only Jewelers Guild, because as we build more Jewelers Guild, the price of jewelry is going to drop and it'll become less profitable. So we're going to build a little bit of each, or quite a bit of each, with the understanding that this is going to be our best economic opportunity for some time here. We'll actually add a couple more levels. Now, in general, you will often want to get the price of goods that are used as inputs in your market cheap, but we are a really small percentage of our market. There's a lot of other players in here, and so if we build a bunch of masonry and look to make sure that the masonry stays cheap, or we build a bunch of lumber and look to make sure it stays cheap, this is going to be helping out other people. It's not going to be helping out us, so we're just going to lock in our good pricing here. We're also going to do a very important thing with our navy. We want maritime presence in general, and so we want navies to patrol it. Our navy's not very good at it right now, but we'll still send them out anyways. But the really important thing is we are going to put our Doge in charge of the navy. Now, it's not because he's really good at leading the navy, although he does have Diplo ability, which helps with the maritime generation. It's because having your general, or having your leader, or anyone who's a member of the crown as your leader of an armed force, either military or navy, is going to give you additional crown power. So we will put him in charge. He's going to actually change quite a bit. We will change leaders quite often. We'll just always put the leader in charge of the navy, and this is going to give us 25% crown power. You can see having that member of the cabinet is also giving us 12.5% crown power. Now, it looks like we're just losing money, and we also have a little bit of a bank. The bank is because we are going to have some negative events early on as Venice, so we just want to keep a little bit of a buffer, and the negative is actually going to go away because we are currently not generating any trade income. So when we unpause, then we will start generating trade income. But if you were, I would suggest at this point, saving the game. We're also going to improve opinion with the 2 subjects we need to annex, or would like to annex. We got to get them above 150, and so this will help in that regard. But the reason why we are saving is because we are going to get an early war. Milan is going to be in charge of that war. This is part of the Venetian flavor, and we want the war to have a certain type of outcome. Otherwise, we would just restart the run if you're on Iron Man, or just reload if you are not on Iron Man. So, taking a look here, it's always nice. It feels it's like some good kind of dopamine to see the trade income come in, and so we are going to see the trade income, ba-bam! That is over half of our income. And this is something that's going to be unique to Venice. It's going to come back down, but we are going to be generating enormous chunks of our income from trade. And so this is actually going to be a very critical part of our economy. So actually, let's make a little bit of an adjustment. We are going to add a bunch of merchant quarters, or marketplaces rather, in this other location that's not the capital. It doesn't matter if it's, or your market access and control don't matter for marketplaces, and so it's better further from the capital to be building marketplaces, and closer to the capital to be building your production buildings. As the game rolls out, we're going to get 4 or 5 events that kind of set the landscape of what's going on. We have the political landscape of Italy event, setting off the Ghibellines and Guelphs, or Guelphs, which is going to be a warring period in Italy, which we are going to opportunistically use to attack other people. We're going to side with the Pope. You can see the 2 sides, the gray being the Pope, and then the yellow being the Emperor. We generally want to fight people who are in the Emperor's group, at least at the start, so we're going to side for the Pope for now, but we're probably going to switch sides. The 100 Years' War kicks off between France and England, and we are very soon going to get an event showing that we are going to have a league against Della Scala, against Verona, where we will have a war. We will contain them. I believe that we will, if we accept here, we will have join a war within the next year, and this is the war we're talking about. We will contain them, and we will have ourselves a bit of a war. And the war is afoot. We're actually a little bit slow on the conscription, but that's okay. We're only going to conscript out of here. Our other locations don't really have much in the way of conscripts, and we're just going to mostly look to dodge their armies and siege down Treviso and Padova, or look to control these sieges so that we can get a good piece where we are taking a big chunk of this land. For now, we're just going to assign a general and kind of wait to see how things develop. We'll also assign one without an admiral trait so he can get a general trait. So in Venice, with our fleet guarding the strait, we are going to be nice and safe, and you can see this 11k stack. That's why we didn't jump in and test the waters with both feet. We are waiting for the most part on Milan to deal with this guy and push him around, and so you can see the opening salvo is not looking very good for our side, but our side overall is going to be stronger. We get a guy coming on over to Venetia. It looks like he's running away, but we're going to wait until this kind of clears out somewhat. So this is an example of one of the events we are talking about, the flooding of Venetia, where we will choose the option that costs us some ducats. Having a buffer is nice because you do not want to take on debt. And then also, we roll pretty high on this, getting plus 10 towards Humanist. Minus 12 stab is a little bit painful, and we'll get to see the penalties start to kick in with a pretty big estate satisfaction, equilibrium, malice. That is not ideal, but the plus 10 stab is going to be nice. Byzantium kicks our asses out. I think generally they don't do that, so that is a little bit of a low roll. And we have, once again, our beloved Republic finds itself embroiled in a significant conflict. We strive to assert our dominance and protect our interests in the region. This war with Padua is both a challenge and an opportunity to Venice. We want to secure Padua, and so we will choose between going towards offensive or defensive. I think defensive is maybe good in multiplayer, but for single player we want offensive for that sieging speed. And we notice the lines are kind of set, drawn in the sand, and there's a bigger stack on our side, sieging over on this side, and then this guy is just waiting for us to, you know, peek our head out so he can headshot us. So this is something you have to be concerned about if you are a country who wants to push naval, which we are, is when you raise an army or have a big army, this is going to give you a big trend towards land. This is unfortunate. We don't like this. This is because our levies have been raised, and so now we're actually pushing towards land. So what we're going to want to do to solve that is we are going to want to give out the privilege of noble navy, giving us a 0.05 progress towards naval. Also, with this, we have a relatively satisfied nobility, and so we're going to want to give out some more privileges. We'll take a little bit of look at what we want. Generally speaking, tax efficiency is an extraordinarily strong modifier, and this is one of the great strengths of Venice. We do like max tax for burghers, but this tax efficiency is very strong, so we will slot this in, and we will also come to the clergy and show off a Republican thing, which is we will go maintain clerical proceedings. This will give quite a bit of satisfaction to the clergy, which is nice for research speed, at expense of the nobles and burghers' estate satisfaction equilibrium. Our burger estate satisfaction equilibrium is over 100% anyways, so that part is free for us. But once we put in maintain clerical proceedings, we will now be able to put in mandatory clerical donations, which will give us plus 10% tax efficiency and a similar trading on our kind of satisfaction for the clergy, which is going to be good for us. And so now we are going to have 19% tax efficiency. We have 5% from land rights, a noble privilege, and then we're getting minus 5% because our crown power is low, but we're still net 20%. So for every ducat we're taking off our estates, we are getting 1.2 ducats into our treasury. We start annexing Trieste. We do want this to finish before we make any more subjects because of a relations penalty hit. The AI is acting a little bit funny, just kind of staying put. We're going to poke our head out and siege this down and see what happens here. We are going to, if they engage us, just retreat as quickly as possible, but just occupy some of the stuff we want to occupy. Alright, well, it looks like they're on the move. We'll press our claims on Verona because we don't really care. And then here, they are on the move as well. So they both identified they don't win, and so they both kind of moved. But let's see if we can go and siege the capital here now instead and try and get something done. The thing is we want the Padova siege to be our siege because we want to flip Padova. So this might be bad for us here. We are trying to play very slow here. We kept the sieging force in the capital and then we moved the other one onto Padova, which caused the AI to be like, hey, he's sieging it, we'll go siege something else, and we're trying to keep an eye on this stack, because the second it touches us, we have to say stranger danger and run away. There's no way we win versus that stack, but we will have minimal losses if we just retreat instantly. But now we don't have our kind of ally sieging down Padova, which is exactly what we want. If they occupy Padova, then we have to reload/restart. If they don't occupy Padova, we can kind of secure the type of outcome that we are looking for here. So this has been a bit of an unusual experience in terms of all of my practice runs here on Venice, where the two big stacks haven't really gone at it. They've kind of just tried to avoid each other. I think they just didn't like the terrain penalties and this type of thing, but we're not going to tolerate this senseless slaughter, considering we can get the peace deal we want now. So taking a look at things, we are going to be going for all of this land, which includes, very importantly, the silver mine here, and we are also going to be going for Bassano, an important location, because we will use that to release this guy as a subject after the peace deal is made, and then we are also subjugating Padua. So we are getting a big chunk of this territory, and I think this is a pretty good peace deal. You could probably push for something a little bit better. I think that it would require maybe a couple restarts or a little bit of good luck, but getting Lucca as a vassal would probably also be nice, but we will settle for this. This is going to be fine enough for us. Now you see that it costs 87, or gives 87 base antagonism. Antagonism is actually reduced by Diplo Rep, so we're going to show off a little bit of a thing. Can we get all the nested tooltips? We can see all the nested tooltips. Diplo Rep is going to be one of the things that decreases this. I'm not sure exactly where it is here. We won't dig through. Oh, Diplo Reputation of the Aggressor is giving us a discount of 33%. We could actually temporarily increase our Diplo Rep by swapping on over this man who's changing societal values to diplomatic endeavors. This gives us Diplo Rep. Now, in a lot of videos I have coming up, I am suffering under the impression that increasing your Diplo slider also increases your Diplo Rep. It does not. I think it did used to in previous patches, but it doesn't anymore, and so we will do a little bit of that, and then we will see that the peace deal, the cost in terms of the antagonism, has gone down by about 6 here, and so we will go for this peace deal. We will see if we could get a little bit of extra gold in this peace deal. That will work for us, and then we will send this demand. And then we're out. We got what we wanted, aka the bag. We also swap back to changing societal values before unpausing, because again, we want to lock in that trend, and we release a couple subjects. A little bit unfortunate that the war wasn't longer, because we didn't get to annex Trieste, but this is going to be good for us. These guys will be quick to annex, and this way they will integrate the territory for us. You see that they have these provinces integrated, because these are historical subjects. These guys have it integrated, but we have conquered settlements. Now, to be fair, we could release these, but we have a small enough amount of locations ourselves that I think we want to make use of these and get them in a more immediate fashion. It's 10 years you have to wait before you can annex, and so we are just going to incorporate these ourselves. So we're going to switch this guy over from doing what he was doing, and he is going to start integrating province, starting with Venice. Actually, let's start with the Silver Province, because this will be faster, and it's just one location because we released the other part of that province to be its own subject, because we're not as keen on making sure we get the lumber right away, but boy oh boy do we want the silver right away. Was poking around a little, and actually, as a result of that flood, we have a huge negative prosperity. We didn't quite notice this before, so we're going to use recovery effort before the integration. This is a really strong cabinet action, but requires you have negative prosperity in order to use it, so we'll get some prosperity as well as a little bit of pop growth. So we roll up our first parliament, and this is going to be a critical tool for getting the setup you want in terms of your start, and also making sure that you can push values a lot more towards the end. We get a pretty good roll in Expand Gravel Road Network. Normally this one is exceptional for pushing centralization, but we don't already, once you're capped on your centralization, this plus 10 allows you to push it further. And this is how you get your values to 100. You get a positive trend, and then you get a lot of these just flat little nudges and pushes, and as it stands right now, we are still decentralized, and so this plus 10 is not going to be that useful, but I think we're still going to select, well, dev the interior is actually really attractive. So we're going to dev the interior. This is really nice for us, because if we intentionally fail it, it will push us a 2 towards naval, which is what we want to push towards anyways. We'll take a 7 stab hit, but we want to use all the support we can. We're going to get 40% support by choosing an issue or a debate of our most powerful estate. And so we're going to select this, develop the interior, and then we're going to have some options. We're going to try and generate as much support as possible in order to try and pass as many laws as possible. This is kind of the opening we want. We have a lot of antagonism anyways. We don't really want to go after a CB. We don't really want additional taxes. We haven't been able to slot in enough estate privileges to really make use of that, and so we're just going to try and change laws. So we're going to go supportive humanist ideas here, and then we are going to ask for a law change, and we are going to look to change off of the thing that is really, really kicking us down in terms of pushing us away from humanist, which is the same religion. This is giving us a trend towards spiritualist of 0.1, and if we swap to any religion, we'll get a trend towards humanist of 0.1. And so by doing this, we will kind of free up our cabinet member to be swapped away to something else. Currently, they are going to be needed until this law comes in all the way. We have an additional 0.09 coming in from any religion, but once that is in place, we will be able to pull off our cabinet member who's giving 0.18 trend towards humanist and be able to add them to pushing centralization. Alright, so it's not looking like we're going to get another law passed through. We had some negative events. We were letting this tick towards the end of the parliament to try and recover up estate satisfaction on the burghers, because the more satisfied they are, the more they give you from the agenda. We don't want to trend towards spiritualist. We have 90 trend towards humanist. 5 towards spiritualist. That's going to make it a whole lot longer until we 100 our humanist trait, which we might sometime soon. And we can click this to progress towards serfdom. So we have roughly 20% on the board that we can get to, but we need to get an interval of 50%. So we have to get lucky. I think what we're going to do, though, is we want to give out more privileges to the burghers. And so we're going to click on up for urban development grants, get that monthly development ticking. And this is going to give us some more satisfaction, going to get us pretty close to the max, and so then we will be able to click for 18%. So let's click up here, and then we have support of innovative. Looks like we are going to get to change another law here, and I think we're going to get to change one law exactly here. So coming in, we're going to ask for another law change. I don't think we want to push the burghers or push the nobility more than this. I think we're fine with this. We're going to ask for a law change, and we are going to change off of the very, very bad traditional distribution of power. This is hurting our ability to push centralization, first of all, and second of all, minus crown power. We don't like that. Instead, we are going to, for now, go favor the ruler, giving us 20% crown power, a little bit of max tax. Long term, we will want favor the wealthy at some point in time, but we're going to favor the ruler for now. And taking a look in terms of our crown power, we should see that go up on the monthly tick. And wait, we don't want this to happen yet. The reason why is we are actually getting something really nice from this parliament as it is still in session. And that's minus 20% urban building cost. We want to make use of this, and so what we're going to do is we are going to spam the marketplaces, because they are very valuable for us, provided they are kind of below normal cost. They are below normal cost despite the masonry being a little bit expensive, and we're not in a very good place to crush the masonry price or bring it down. Although we could probably throw in a couple masons. Let's throw in a mason here. We'll get those laborers working. And let's add also more marketplaces over here. Add 1 mason. I think we can maybe afford 1 here. That will be nice. And then I think we can build more of these. Ah, this is more expensive than what we would have to normally pay because this is only masonry, not masonry and glass combo. So instead, I think we're just going to max out the marketplaces in Trevieso. It doesn't have a lot of control here because this place isn't integrated and we haven't connected it via a road yet, but the marketplaces don't care about market access and they don't care about control, and so we're going to be fine with that for now. So we will take our monthly tick and see what happens to our Republican power, or sorry, see what happens to our crown power. There's our progress towards naval, and it comes up a couple percent, which is going to be nice because, again, this is scaling our trade income. So now we're making a pretty penny, quite a bit more than before. I just realized a little bit of a misclick. I didn't cancel improving relations, which is what I wanted to do with Trieste. I canceled annexing them. So we're going to start annexing them. We definitely wanted to annex them earlier, and then we are going to also cancel improving relations, or improving opinion here. We are going to have now, I think, a net neutral on the diplomats. We want to have at least a little bit of diplomats to work with, so we are going to spend up on the slider until we get a 0.05 in the diplomats, which is going to cost us a little bit here. We build a single unit, not because we want it, but because we want that juicy, juicy crown power. We will put a guy in charge who is part of the crown estate, and so that's going to bring up our Republican tradition quite a bit here, in addition to us assigning a new guy in here because our Doge died. We hate it when it happens. You can see here our trade income represents over 50% of our income. In fact, it's quite close to 60%. This is highly unusual. On most nations, it's going to be between 10 and 20%, but we have so many bonuses for it, and we are pushing it quite a lot. You can see marketplaces in all the urban areas, which is good because some of these areas do not have that much control that we have going on. And so we're going to want to eventually get roads coming in, but the roads are going to be more important once we get more urban stuff there. For now, where we kind of want to get a little bit of control is where the silver is. And so we're going to want to put down a road here. Now, building a road, it has several inputs, and these inputs are in the lumber, masonry, and sand. Normally, we would want to collapse the price of these first, but we are such a small portion of our overall demands of our market that if we collapse the price, we're just going to make it easier for other people to use masonry and lumber and sand cheaper. And also, with the lumber specifically, if we take a look, we are actually importing a ton with the burghers, and we are importing 13 here. So if we wanted to collapse the price of lumber, we would have to build more than 13 lumber, because as we build one lumber, the burgher will stop importing one lumber, right? They are just importing to fill the need here. And so we would have to build a ton of lumber to collapse the price. We are building some masonry, so we do have an eye towards this long term, but the masonry, the burghers are even importing a little bit. And then the sand we could try and push down, but taking a look here, the burghers are importing this too. So it would be quite a while before we would be able to achieve that, especially with us having such a limited number of locations. And again, look at all the people who are in this market other than us. And so for now, what we're going to do is we're going to eat the full cost of the road, and we're going to build the road up to the location that is going to be having this. This notably isn't the best route to build the road in terms of overall fastest access. However, we can't build a road in the location of our enemy, and so we are just going to build a road up here, and then that should give us more than the zero control that we are getting, or the zero proximity that we are currently getting in that location. Because if we take a look at the proximity map mode and we look at like one of these segments, we are going to cut this proximity cost to land from 40 to 20, and so this is going to make it a lot cheaper to get on up over to the silver location. Alright, so the Age of Renaissance hits for us, and we are going to have a few choices of what focus to do. Our focus will unlock a bunch of additional techs that are added to the tech tree, and so it is going to be a pretty big deal. We will not get the techs in the other two trees we do not select. Generally speaking, we're going to be a little bit broad strokes on this. I think the administrative focus tree tends to be best, or focus, but we are going to go diplo focus because we are a republic, and there's a couple things that we want access to. The first is monthly diplomats. This is generally pretty good early on, and we don't have access to the Royal Gardens building, which is a monarchy building, which gives 0.2 monthly diplomats, so we're going to be a little bit squeezed on that. Next up, we want Marcher Lords. This gives us the March subject type. The amount of subject types helps you to keep them loyal because they have different type of loyalty calculations for each of them, and so the more subject types you have, the more loyalty calculations you will have. And so we only have one subject type as a republic. We just have vassals. We don't have access to fiefdoms. So we would like to have an additional subject type, and marches are actually pretty decent, and this is the only way to get them. Some other good texts that are really good in this tree is going to be experienced diplomats, giving us diplo reputation. This is going to help for the antagonism reduction, but also next age it will help us to become the diplo hegemon, and then also pressuring diplomacy. The minus war score cost is also going to be quite nice, but we have a lot of diplomatically focused things in here as well. We're going to go the diplo focus for this age, and then we are going to kind of take a look at our tech tree. We have institution growth. We started to research that in age 1, but now for age 2, we have unlocked the free tree without needing to embrace an institution. We have several options in terms of good things for this. There is Army Morale, that is a Republic tech. There is also going to be the Max Literacy for Burghers, which is quite attractive to us early on here. But I think we're going to go for the Improve Relations, mainly because we're squeezed on diplomats, generally speaking. And then we could take a look at where we have had stuff added onto the tree here, where we are going to have experienced diplomats and benign diplomats over here. And I think we're just going to rush these techs. They will be reasonably good for us and help us to smooth things out. Generally speaking, we also could just spend more on our Diplo spending, and I think we actually will increase this a little bit so that we have more moves that we can make generally. And then we are going to start improving relations with people we've generated antagonism with. We're also going to increase the stability slider a little bit as well, because we do want to accumulate some stab for eventually revoking the Zonta privilege, which is going to be a huge stab hit, and so we want to have quite a bit of stab access. Here we can see our antagonism map mode, and we can see Austria's generated a little bit of antagonism on us. We want them to be friendly with us overall, so we're going to improve relations with them and keep things going on nice and smooth. We are probably going to look to fight Verona again here in the near future. We are going to take a little bit of a look at active trades. We've started to import gold because we wanted to build one of our government buildings, which will give us a monthly Republican tradition, but also we are going to look to solve some of our pop needs to the extent that we are able to solve them, and also get missing inputs if possible. We see that silver is a missing input, and so that is going to be a little bit of curiosity. Our jewelry is going to be better served by increasing this, but we see here there's not enough workers in this silver already. We're just going to leave it alone for now, but anytime the workers start to get increased, we're going to expand the silver. Even if the silver doesn't have a collapsed lumber price, remember we can't collapse lumber that easily, and the silver is so valuable that it's not going to really matter if we don't get it at a discount sort of price, so we'll be back with some trades. Alright, so we have a few of these set up. They're mainly food trades. They're only a little bit less profitable than our least profitable trade here, as you can see, and they are going to be helping to make our pops more satisfied. Now, we haven't fully satisfied them, even though we are importing amounts that are greater than what this looked like, but we have to remember that there are needs for all of the pops inside the Venezia market that need satisfying, and so these only partially satisfy those needs, but we have these in, and we can click these up as time goes on, especially if they're looking as really profitable, then we will be more apt to click them up. In particular, though, we do want to import furniture really aggressively because furniture as a good requires lumber. We want to decrease the demand for lumber in our market, generally speaking, because that way we can collapse the price of lumber easier. Currently, there's 13 burger imports, and we can see that if we look at demand, part of the demand is the carpenters. So if we import more furniture, we won't need as many carpenters, and so this can keep the demand for wood low, which will allow us to eventually achieve a wood surplus, which is what we need in order to collapse the price of it. So we could take a closer look at satisfaction in the market here, and let's take a look at some noble satisfaction, because we know that a lot of them are kind of upset because we have low estate satisfaction on our nobility, and we can see here that minus 36% satisfaction, and these guys are actually brewing up a rebellion against us, but we see that lack of gems, furniture, and rice is actually also hurting the stab here. So this is part of what we're trying to do, is we're trying to resolve this so that they don't join rebellions, because taking a look, if the satisfaction drops below 16.9, they will join a rebellion. If they weren't lacking these things, then they wouldn't have joined the rebellion here. And we have to get them all the way up to 29% in order to get them to leave the rebellion, but this smooths things out for us just in general, but also general satisfaction is going to be valuable because it increases our prosperity, and our prosperity is going to be a really important thing to have, and if we take a look at our prosperity map mode, I think we will be gaining some, but very, very little. We want to get this to 100, and so achieving some source of prosperity in the early game is going to be useful. Currently, we have free subjects as our source, so we maybe want to push that value up a little bit. But also we have market fairs. Everyone kind of gets market fairs, and so usually you want a little bit extra because you kind of want 0.15 trend at least, I feel, in order to push 100 at a reasonable pace, but right now our prosperity is at 5% here. We do get an alliance with Milan, which, important to note, this is going to be our biggest pressure on our Diplo capacity here. We still have a little bit of room, but we do want to keep an eye on this. But this alliance with Milan is going to serve several important features. First of all, it's going to allow us to break up Hanukkah boxes in northern Italy, of which Milan is likely to become a big part. They're a big player there, and we can make them break their alliances, allowing us to attack their former allies. Two, it's going to allow us to improve cultural opinion of Milan, which we would be able to incorporate the Lombard culture easier if we are ever to conquer them, which will be nice. We'll also be able to use these favors to ask them for money, which will be nice. This will scale with our economy, so it can be quite powerful, and it could be a tool for actually weakening Milan, forcing them into debt, and so this is going to be nice. And then three, just generally speaking, on offense or defense, they are a useful ally to have in this region, and we can use the access interaction, or sorry, the influence interaction, which is not visible here. We can use 10 favors in order to call them into war, which will allow us to turn the tide of a lot of wars if we are having any sort of difficulty. So we get an important event here that will allow us to push towards naval, and a little bit of emphasis is important on these events is a lot of these require you to have 50 progress towards a specific value in order to fire. So we can fire the humanist events because we have over 50 progress towards them, but we can't fire centralization events because we don't have centralization progress over 50, or decentralization events, or there's events in which in these categories that we can't fire. A lot of these are really, really good, and in particular, this one won't fire unless we have over 50 trend towards, or 50 progress towards naval, and so getting the first 50 progress towards naval is generally a lot harder. There's a similar event if you are already trending towards land, so it's really nice that we are already over 60 here, or already over 50, which 60 is, and then we will be able to push more towards naval. This is really kind of a focus of the early game. This tends to fade more into the background after you get a lot of your values set up. Going out of your way to try and fix them becomes much less of a consideration, but I do think it is an important thing to focus on early on. We get our first institution spawn in London with professional armies. That'll spread pretty easy though. So we also get the institution of Savona, which is right next to Genova, spawning banking, which is going to be nice. We really want this institution specifically, but also if we hover the percentages over here, you will be able to see why institutions spawn and these sorts of things, and also be able to see who is most likely to spawn the institution. We actually don't have any chance to spawn the Renaissance, which is unfortunate, but okay. What market these institutions in is also really going to matter. This is going to be in the Genoa market. We want access to banking early, and what you can do is you can import from the market where the institution is in order to get it to spread to your market. So why don't we put in a little bit of a trade to Genoa, and I know that they tend to have a big surplus of marble, although we do too, but this tends to be something that you can import from them, and so we'll import a little bit from them. It's not going to be the most profitable trade, but it will help to spread to our market the institution of banking. And you can see banking is actually spreading quite quickly. I think this is probably because it has the could have spawned here modifier, and in addition to a bunch of percentage modifiers. So we'll actually have banking soon enough, and once we have 20% of our population in locations with the institution, we will be able to embrace it. And for us, our population is really densely kind of compacted here. We just kind of need these 4 locations to get an institution for us to be able to embrace it. Something I forgot to mention at game start, but important for all you Iron Man players, if you want to form Carthage, you actually have to, on formable countries in the game rules, swap on over to ahistorical for whatever reason before you start the game, or after. If you are not on Iron Man, you can change the settings, which we will change that here now, so we will be able to form Carthage later. And Milan spawns the Renaissance. Since we're already importing from the Genoa market, it will start spreading to us here. So we are starting to expand in places other than the capital. I just wanted to briefly touch on why we are doing what we are doing and what we are doing. So we are expanding the Spinners Guild in Chioggia. We are specifically going for locations close to the capital because they'll have high control and high market access. And the reason we're expanding wool or spinning guilds here is we have wool in Venice, so we're going to get 10% production efficiency. Also, it was just a profitable thing, so that's going to be nice. You notice the capital economy going to be a big one on that. And it's important to note that this actually gets you more than 32% net. When we take a look at the building and we look at what we would be getting instead or without this production efficiency, what it does is it increases your output. And so without this, our output would be 1.93 in terms of the cloth, but now we're getting 2.56, which this is a little bit more than a 25% increase. It's kind of close to a 30% increase. And so this means our income on here without this would only be roughly 70% of what it would be otherwise. So this would be what, down to 5.5, let's say. So our margin without this, because this minus this equals how much money we make, would be something to the tune of 0.9. So this is roughly speaking, this 32% is roughly speaking tripling our net income. So we are going to be really good at producing these urban buildings, or in terms of getting a lot of value, because we have so much production efficiency, because we have capital economy, and we want to build around these input good things, or the input good bonuses, pretty aggressively if we can. And so we are going to, just to take a look at the province we have, this is the Venetia province, this is what the resources are, and so anything that uses these inputs is going to be attractive. So we're going to be good at cloth, fine cloth, and tanneries specifically, and so we are going to be doing that. We're also pretty rich at this point relative to our size, so we're also going to be urbanizing here so that we can start to build urban buildings there. Generally speaking, you don't want to build over good resources. You want to build where you have a lot of pops, but this is a fish resource and it has a lot of pops, and so we will want to do that. This also will help to increase the control, because towns will have bonuses to control, as in addition to a bunch of other bonuses, and so this will be nice for us. We are also wanting to expand here, however, there's only 22 control here, and so we will want to improve that. We're going to improve that with a road by bringing a road here, knowing that we will want to start building some urban stuff soon. And another thing you might notice is, hey, there's not enough burgers to employ in there for all the marketplaces there. Why does this place have so much more burgers? You have all the marketplaces plus some more extra stuff, and the reason being is lack of control really negatively affects pop promotions. And so bringing the road there is going to be a good investment, even though we can't do it at collapsed prices, as we start to kind of branch out here. Coming up, we do have the Black Plague, so kind of our next expenses are going to be going after building hospitals in each one of our urban areas, and this is another reason why we want to expand out the urban area, is that way we will be able to build a hospital there in order to help preserve as many pops as we can. So we actually roll pretty well on our parliament, picking up increased naval infrastructure. We're going to get a bunch of dev and progress towards naval, and then we get a naval on our agenda, so we are going to immediately be able to push this. There's actually not too many laws we want to change remaining, but I think we are going to swap off a foundation of the Republic. This is pretty marginal. Monthly Republican tradition is a really good modifier, but we're going to swap off of this and onto virtues of the Politia, which might be better now, but I think might be worse later on. But what this is going to give us is a state satisfaction equilibrium and peasant equilibrium, which is going to be good for us at this current juncture. Generally speaking, the way you are trying to get taxes is going to be by having a bunch of max tax, which we have a good source of 45% for the peasant, and then having enough satisfaction to back that up such that you can tax people as much as possible. So the satisfaction is in effect an economic modifier as long as we have max tax. We will be really, really satisfied on the burgers though, so that is going to be nice. But coming back in, here we will push towards innovative, and then we can push towards plutocratic, but we are starting to get into a little bit of a squeeze. We are going to make the nobles upset yet again, but sometimes that's how it happens. We won't want to contain professional armies, so we get several value pushes that we are pretty interested in, and also, at this point, I think we have mostly locked in the trajectories we want, to the extent that we can lock them in, and so we are in good shape as it relates to the values. Notably, 0.55 towards centralization means we will push towards 50 centralization or 55 centralization. So we get an event that is going to give us additional support. You can't store more than 100% support, and there's useful things we can do with this support. So what we are going to do is we are going to ask for larger levies. Not a lot of our money is coming from tax right now, so request additional taxes isn't going to be that good. It would increase our max taxes by quite a lot for a year though, but what we're going to do is we're going to ask for additional levies here. We're going to say, well done. We do want to pass naval infrastructure, and so we will keep going towards it with saving at least 50 support in the parliament. So seeing as we can embrace banking so early, we're going to make a little bit of a pivot with our research. We're only going to complete the improved relation aspect of it, and then we are going to embrace the institution. Now we are in negative stab, leading into the Black Plague. A little bit risky, kind of uncomfortable, but we do want to get some stuff from banking as quickly as possible. In particular, trade range is something that we like. We're going to start off with the lead tech, but what we want is this trade range into getting docks. Docks are going to be really important because if we take a look, and probably natural harbor, let's go dock, bark, natural, actually dock, protected harbor. And one of the reasons why is if we take a look at these two locations in terms of the proximity, we will be going out to sea, which costs us 0 because we have so much harbor capacity in Venice. We have 105% harbor capacity. This fully reduces this 40 cost to go out into the sea zone. However, coming back in to Meste, this costs 17 because we have to use the harbor capacity there. Those two buildings that we are researching, the dock and also the protected harbor, are going to give an additional 20% harbor capacity, allowing us to reduce further this by an enormous chunk, right? Each one of these 10% is going to be worth 4 proximity in terms of the reduction, so this is going to reduce it down to 9-ish, and so this means that Mestre will have, an additional 8 proximity, right? So it'll have 90 proximity, but this also affects everything downstream, because on the way to Trevieso, we have to go through Mestre, and so Trevieso will also have an additional 8 proximity, and so this means that they will both have 6 more control, which is throttling all of our stuff, and so this is what we want. And also, anytime we are going out from any sea zone into another one or into another land zone, which is 100% of the time, if we are going into a place with a better harbor, this will benefit us. And both of these buildings, to just kind of take another look at them, are going to be benefiting harbor capacity here. We could see that the dock is going to get harbor capacity 0.1, in addition to giving us a ton of sailors, allowing us to actually build a much bigger fleet than we can currently, although we currently can with the Venetian arsenal. In theory, we probably should close down the Venetian arsenal in the open because we don't need the sailors just yet. And then the protected harbor, again, harbor capacity here is going to be what we're interested in. After that, I think we're going to want to push the barks, and so that will be what we want from banking on this side of the tree in the near future. Diplo range, a little bit attractive, but we're going to hold off on that. And then coming over here, we are really going to want the counting house. So we are going to put that on first, and then the counting house gives us local crown power. So if we build it in our locations, it has to be an urban location, town or city, but that's almost all of our locations. Every one of these plus 33% crown power. And with this, we will be able to get much more trade income. Following that, let's get a little bit of trade range pickup, and then probably want to get an entry pot, but maybe we'll play it by ear. Bureaucracy is also attractive. We'll see what we're feeling then, but in particular, we want to get this above 25% and comfortably staying above 25%, but also, as we get more crown power, it will get cheaper and cheaper for us to revoke Zonta. Also, as we get more burghers power, it'll become cheaper and cheaper to revoke Zonta, which is something that we want to do. And a key note is the centralization. That's another 50% crown power, right? And also, as we build more buildings, that are burger oriented here, these are employing a bunch of burgers, right? 3,000 burgers here. That means there will be more burgers in the location, and they'll have more political power, and this too will dilute out the power of the nobility. And so this is going to allow us to squeeze them down to make revocation of that privilege much, much cheaper. I'm not sure, but I do believe this is an event that requires over 50 humanists, which will give us fair laws. Very nice to be getting tax efficiency and estate satisfaction here. So the Black Death spreads to our nation. This is unfortunate. We take a stab hit too. We're going to get a lot of events that have stab issues, and so we're going to be doing some stuff here. We get a bunch of options also to push particular trends. We're going to wait for the Black Death to actually set in a little bit more, and then what we are going to do is we are going to come in and use the situation here to segregate the infected. The reason why we're going to wait a hot second is because sometimes you segregate the infected, you completely eliminate the Black Death, then you lose the modifier, and then you need to wait for it to spread to you again, and you lose an additional stab. So we're going to wait a hot second, but now, what's going to happen, hospital coming in and mess stay just in the nick of time, what's going to happen now is a whole bunch of our burgers are going to die. We're not going to have qualifications, and we're not going to be able to benefit from urban buildings, generally speaking, through the burgers, because we're not going to have qualified pops. And so what we're going to start pushing now, in terms of pushing on the eco, is the scriptoriums. We are going to be building, let's say, these in the capital. Actually, we're going to be building these everywhere. We're going to want to be building books and this type of stuff. I'm not sure exactly how many we'll push, but we'll push some. We'll figure it out based on how much money we're making. Secondly, we know that we aren't going to get qualified pops, so like this silver isn't going to employ up, so there's no point in expanding out the silver, which is kind of the one rural thing we are focused on right now. But what we can build is we can build villages, because villages employ peasants. Peasants are completely unqualified pops. The fact that your qualified pops are dead, it's not going to matter, so pushing market villages and other types of villages will be useful here. We're not really going to be pushing a lot of villages because we're pretty urbanized anyways, but for most runs you are going to want to push villages during this time where you're not going to have qualifications for the RGOs and you're not going to have burger qualifications here. But we have plenty of clerics, which is why we can push up on the books specifically, because those employ clerics. Another thing that we can do in these times of trouble is we can build overseas trade offices. Now, this is something we have a really good advantage in because we get the discount on it from having a merchant republic. It's going to give us trade advantage and capacity and maritime presence, which helps us to get further more trade advantage, allowing us to gain control of trade, have really lucrative trades with the trade advantage, and then a small amount of trades from this trade capacity, even though it's overseas. We also can build the Fondaco, which is an Italian unique building, which serves much a similar function. This can be built in urban areas, the trade center, the trade office, also in urban areas. And so we will go ahead and build that. But what the Fondaco? We can't build any Fondaco buildings. Well, that's because you need special permission. So we have been improving relations with Naples for the purposes of getting this. And so now what we can do is request rights for this. We're going to start with trade offices because they are a little bit more efficient. You can see the base price of this is going to be 50, but for us, it has been reduced a whole lot by the various modifiers we have, so we get to build it for 17. Normal trade centers or marketplaces are going to give us trade capacity of 1, so this is kind of what we're comparing this to, and this is going to give us a trade capacity of 0.3, but it's going to cost us around half as much, and it's going to be in a market where we don't otherwise have trade capacity, so this will be fairly solid. We'll build it in quite a few locations here, and we will be on our way. Milan somehow loses to Brescia, and part of the peace deal for them is taking and getting rid of our alliance with them, which is a bit unfortunate for us. Our subject here is providing a very important function. See, they actually have cores on Verona, and with them as our subject, or them just released and having cores, what they will do is they will generate a spy network, and then they will use that spy network in order to generate a casus belli. And so this is useful for us because we can use their CBs, and so we can declare on Verona with the very nice claims on province CB. We wanted to invite Milan to the party. We were waiting to invite them. We thought they were going to win the war, but alas, they did not. We still are looking pretty good here, and we have more than enough money to hire mercs if need be, so we are going to declare war here. The plague often offers nice opportunities to change your values. Here we see we can gain 18 stab, very nice, and progress towards humanist, and we also see we have a little bit of progress going on towards spiritualist. We kind of don't want that, but we have to take a look. I think that there might be something in Black Plague that is currently pushing us towards that degree. Maybe it's the religious tolerance from the Black Plague. We will have to make some adjustments, maybe. And we will go for a subjugation on Verona. We're going to use Parliament to swap onto no censorship for that little bit of humanist action. We're also going to grab a CB and larger levies from the Parliament. So we go with our Parliament CB against Ferrara, and then with that, we also drag in Aquileia. We're gonna do a really, really expensive piece on Aquileia. We want all of this territory at a reasonably high level, because this is going to be stuff we can get a decent amount of proximity towards, and so we since we want it all, we could take a piecemeal amount of it, but it's overall cheaper on the antagonism if you subjugate, and you can see that this really upsets people. This really upsets people in the HRE because we are messing with the HRE. Yeah, they don't like that. But they aren't going to join a coalition, and then we will give them a little bit of time to cool down. We will improve relations with them, and we will get a little bit to the point where no one's going to be joining the coalition, and then we will be piecing out Ferrara for what we wanted, which is making them a vassal. You can see here, 5 people joined the coalition. That's not too bad. Mantua, we will improve relations with. Bamberg and Parma, we will also improve relations with. And then the top 2 we have truces with, so we don't need to worry about these guys. And so we'll just kind of chill here for a little bit while still being at war. And then maybe we go for occupying this guy and have him give us a little bit of gold. But this should be a nice little crescent that we have gotten for ourselves, carved out in pretty good territory. We're also starting to annex Padova here, which is going to be good for us, and we are generating a CB on Mantua, but honestly we're probably going to have an amount of antagonism that we are unlikely to use that CB, or we just use that CB to take one location here, is actually maybe how we handle it, because I do believe this is a releasable, and then from there we can use a reconquest CB on them later. So the Black Plague did kill over, or around a little bit over, a third of our pops. The kill count is 173k. I do believe that this popped up after they had already cleared our land, where it was no longer put in, but okay. Before this ends, we will sponsor Mass Forgiveness, which will cost us some money in terms of maintenance, but that's going to give us plus 12 stabs, so more than happy to be having that. There's also a building that is particularly good when you're depopulated, and that is the settlement. Settlement requires that you be building in a place that has less than 5% of its population capacity filled by pops, but it gives a ton of migration attraction and a ton of pop growth. So, with the plague ravaged over our area, we will be able to build this in quite a few locations, and we will build it everywhere we can, including in our subjects, so that they get more pops as well, because eventually their lands will become our lands. We are just in general paying a little bit more on the Diplo slider because we are using our diplomats pretty actively, and so we want to have more of them. But we have an interesting decision in our parliament here because we have support the state. Now, okay, we aren't going to get much support from support the state, but we've already passed all the laws we want, and so usually the opening salvo, that's kind of what things are about. And here we get 50% crown power during the debate only, so only during the 6 months this is going to be happening. So we're going to make a whole lot more of, we're supposed to make a lot more income from trade, but the crown power hasn't figured in yet. I think we have to let the month pass, and when the month tick happens, look, our crown power goes up to 31%, and our noble power goes down to 12%. And this is very, very low. And now, Zonta is only 42 to revoke. So remember, at the start, it was a full, very, very large 100 to revoke, or I think it was 108. And so now it is much cheaper. We can even go out of our way to give other privileges to other estates to make them more powerful, to dilute out the power of the nobility here. This is a little bit tempting. I think that we want communalism anyways, and we like stabs, so we are going to be going for this. But I think that that's going to be the only one we go for, and then now we could revoke the Zonta for cheaper. I think we have to take another month tick for that to be into effect. Shepherds are, of course, vassals feel safe. This is nice for us. A loyalty of subjects plus 10 makes it easier to annex them. That is largely what we're trying to do, and we are going to get a little bit of an event. We will choose to just lose the money. We are going to integrate these guys on a pretty fast cooldown here, but with this in, now they're at 11%. Let's revoke the Zonta. It's only going to cost us 42. We pull that out. Now they're not very satisfied because we pulled out, which often leaves them unsatisfied. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be giving them a few privileges. We didn't want to give them privileges before because we wanted them to be weak, because we wanted to go out and, pull out the Zonta. But now we can give them a few privileges in order to make them happy so we don't have a little rebellion. To be fair, the rebellions they don't have that much teeth, so it's not that big a deal, but I like giving them stuff so that they don't rebel, so we will also go for the primacy of nobility here. Discipline, very strong modifier, but that's a ton of power to the nobles. We don't really care, because they're not going to have that high a base power, but this is going to give us some discipline there, and then they will be at 30 satisfaction. They will get quite a bit more from the ongoing ongoing parliament, but we have Zonta revoked, and so we have gotten rid of this 25% malice. And as you can see here, we have stacked up quite a few modifiers, including centralization. We're almost at 50 centralization here, and so when this next tick comes over, we'll probably be over 30%, which is really, really good for us. It's a very comfortable spot. I think we want trade efficiency over the other one, most likely. Yeah, we'll go for the trade efficiency here, and then with the month tick, we do get up to 31, so this is going to put us in pretty good shape. It's going to come back down after we lose the 50% off the parliament, but this is going to be just a very, very nice for us, and so we've kind of dealt with the issue privilege that we had at game start now that Zont is gone. An issue with having one location subjects is sometimes they have a rebellion and they break free. Big sad on that one. Counting houses are going to add even more crown power here. Again, this scales our trade income, which is basically our biggest source of income. Looks like this is a little bit pricey right now. Oh, I guess it's not. Huh. It feels pricey. But okay, we will just build all of them, considering the prices are collapsed, and then we'll build a little bit more beyond that. So Padua is going to be a nice annex for us because they have a full-on city, and cities are going to have, very importantly, much higher level of supported buildings, and they can support more individual buildings per section, so you can get more economies of scale bonus. So if we see here, +5 for it being a city, and so we can push economies of scale. That's going to be valuable. It is going to be in a different province, right? It will be in the Padova province, which doesn't really have the best things to build into, but that'll be fine enough. We will just push whatever's really profitable, stuff that we need in a lot of different locations, so probably for us, the tools will be a good choice. But taking a look here, we also have another city in right here. And so what we could do is, we're not planning on annexing Verona in the immediate future. They're not very loyal anyways. So what we're going to do is seize territory. This is going to give them 20 Liberty Desire, but by the time we want to annex them, the Liberty Desire will have gone down. It'll take us 40 months for it to go down, but we're just going to take this city as well, and so we will have several urban locations. We are going to check and build some roads, I think. I'm not entirely sure if it's better for us to build a gravel road from this location, or either one of these locations. But what we can do is, we can take a look at the proximity here and see which one has better proximity. We have 90 proximity here, and we have 94 here. So roads from this location are probably going to be a little bit better, all things equal. But notice this is way more proximity than before. Let's check that out. We have way more proximity than we did initially. We had 14 last time we checked in on this location, and we had significantly less here in Treviso. And so what we can see is that this cost has come down from 17 to something like 9, 10. We have more harbor capacity. We have built the harbor capacity buildings, and we are working on the maritime, although the maritime won't affect this specifically, and so we will be able to have more max control. We've also integrated these areas. The control hasn't risen to its equilibrium yet. You can see this place's equilibrium is 63. It's only at 38. This place's equilibrium is 52. They're at it. And this place is going to be 34. So that means 34% of the what would be contributed to the tax base from the very lucrative silver is going to be going into our tax base, because this decreases the amount of tax based on the amount of control you have. So that is going to be useful for us. We are now having several more locations to build in, and as you can see, we have freed up a lot of the bank that we were sitting on now that we have more locations in which to be spending it. We probably should have built these a little bit earlier, but the libraries are going to serve several functions for us. Namely, first of all, they are going to double our pop promotion speed. Base rate is 10. This is going to add another 10. We don't really need the institution growth. We've embraced all the institutions, but culture is going to be nice. It's going to allow us to annex subjects faster, and max local literacy is going to be nice. So we're going to build these in all of our locations here. They're not very expensive because we collapsed the price of books, and so we will get away with only paying 30 for each. For tech, I think we're going to go bureaucracy to allow ourselves to push centralization a little bit more with centralized bureaucracy before we start adding in various privileges and such, which give us decentralization, which will pull us away from being able to actually push the value with trend. So we're going to go for bureaucracy, and then we are going to go into professional ideas, which we accepted. We are going to go for armory straight away, and then I think what we're going to go for is men-at-arms, which particularly is going to allow us a better unit in the men-at-arms for a regular, but also we will get the levies, which will raise 5% of our valid pops. I think our current levies only raise 2 or 3%, and we want to get these nice and in place because I think we're going to take a little bit of a crack at Tunis here, looking to set up a couple of things. First of all, eventually we do want... What are you doing? What are you doing, Sicily? What are you up to? But we do want to probably flip Muslim as well, because the religion is going to be better, and so it is easier to do that if we do that while we're on a low population. If we grab enough locations, we just need 40% of our pops to be Sunni in order to make the flip, and so being a little bit proactive on going after them is going to be nice, although I suppose we could just fight Sicily, considering Sicily's done this. Also, just from a macro perspective, expanding in multiple places is just way better for antagonism management. We have a bunch of antagonism in Italy right now. Mantua is actually allied to Bohemia, so we can't actually go after Mantua. And also, there's no antagonism down here, so making that swap is going to be good. Speaking of, the Ghibellines and Guelphs, one of the big things that you're getting from here is the ability to generate CBs with diplomats. We like that, but considering we have a Mantua CB, the only thing that we're really getting a CB on is Genoa here, and I think that we actually want to flip sides, switch sides, and go for some of these other guys on the other side. So let's leave the faction, and later we will be able to rejoin under the Emperor here. Although I think we don't want the Emperor to win, so we might let the Guelphs get a decent chunk of progress here before we rejoin on the side of the Emperor, because we'd rather everyone leave the Emperor, because that way it's easier to go after them. So I do think we're going to play a little bit of small ball down here though, and we want to set up to be able to do that. So we're actually in a little bit of a squeeze spot because the progress for the Ghibellines and Guelphs situation is going to be based on tax base. And I don't want to name names, but someone became emperor and is kind of warping the degree and rate at which this is going. We do want the Guelphs to win eventually, and so even though we wanted to join the Ghibellines, we might have to rejoin the Guelphs, or we might have to just very briefly be in the Ghibellines, get a couple CBs, and then get out. And so we're going to leave this unjoined for now, and then maybe after we attack North Africa a couple times, come in, join the Ghibellines, and then leave very, very quickly. But we're going to be keeping an eye on this progression because he is getting quite a bit more progress than we had anticipated, because normally Naples really carries the Guelphs, and they do really, really well, but it is not, normally Bohemia doesn't become emperor quite this early, and you have to deal with the likes of Austria or Bavaria, which is much more manageable. We pick up Drill Army, and this is one we have to be a little bit careful with as a naval nation. We have 0.13 progress towards naval. One of the issues is our army tradition and navy tradition count towards this. And so if we generate too much army tradition by drilling and having really experienced units, we will be in bad shape. However, we are going to drill for now, and come on up. We're just going to make sure that we keep an eye on our naval value as we do. So we are starting to work to collapse the lumber price. We're doing stuff like building lumber in our subjects. We've expanded out all our own lumber, building lumber mills in various places. We have to get in excess more sell orders than we do buy orders. And so for that, we have currently burgers importing of 29. So we basically have to produce 30 or more lumber to start collapsing the price. So this is going to be a very long-term effort. However, we are just sitting on money, and we don't necessarily want to go for some investments that are really expensive that involve a collapsed lumber price, giving us a big discount on this. And so an example of this is founding a city being like 300 gold cheaper if we have discounted lumber. Now we can, spend that 300 gold on lumber mills, get like 7 lumber mills, right? And with those 7 lumber mills, we are one step closer to collapsing the price. It means that we are going to have to build quite a few cities in order to pay for this lumber collapse pricing, but eventually it will pay for itself. And so we are starting to go for this because now the tickets are really big, or the big ticket items, and we don't necessarily have as fast a return as we would like we do on the silver. We get a very nice role for our parliament, getting expand gravel road network. This notably will give us 10 towards centralization. Also, whenever you have a parliament in session, if it is in the capital, it will also give you 0.1 towards centralization. So we're going to be able to, for a little bit, for 6 months, push 0.6 towards centralization for 6 months. So we'll get a little over 60. And then once we pass this parliament, we'll get up to 70 centralization. And this is less than 30 years into the game, giving it an enormous amount of crown power and proximity cost reduction. So that is going to be really good for us. We're going to click the buttons. We don't have anything too crazy going on, but I think that we probably can go for a CB somewhere and maybe get a cheeky war in before we go after Tunis, because we're waiting on a tech for Tunis, and the antagonism's not too terribly bad up here. Okay, so now that we've kind of capped out our centralization in terms of what we can ever possibly push with our cabinet members, now we view this 0.39 as a resource that allows us to do various things with it. And so, for example, what we're going to do next parliament is we have a law for centralized bureaucracy, right? This law has a cost in that we want to go decentralized bureaucracy. This gives us decentralization. And so now for the price of effectively 0.2 centralization, we can swap from centralized bureaucracy to decentralized bureaucracy in order to get some monthly prosperity. But also remember, satisfaction helps prosperity, right? And so if we have higher pop satisfaction, then we will have greater gain of prosperity. And we're actually gaining prosperity at a decent clip, so we're probably in okay shape, benefiting from free subjects a little bit. Maybe don't have satisfaction the best in some spots, but something we could do, since we are very urban oriented, we actually don't make anywhere near as much money through the peasants as most other people do. So we could low tax the peasants and raise their satisfaction, and this would generally raise location satisfaction pretty high. But also what we can do is we can go and give out estate privileges, not for a specific purpose of wanting that estate privilege, but instead because we want higher satisfaction on our pops, and we have commoners of the administration. This one takes decentralization, and so effectively with our centralization progress, we buy the ability to put that in, but we don't want to do that until we've exhausted our ability to push centralization as much as we possibly can, which at this point we have, so it's only events and also parliaments that will allow us to push it further. Alright, a few things. First, we're going to subjugate Florence, a quick little war, which is going to give us no coalition members, just a little bit of antagonism on some people, but we're not going to be getting any more on them in the near future, so that's going to be okay for us. Also, we're going to embrace Renaissance at this point in time. It has spread to us, and so we're going to pick that up. It's going to give us a little bit more research speed. The research speed's worth a lot early. For each embraced institution you have, you get 5% research speed, and so while you don't have a lot of these percentage modifiers, they are going to be useful for increasing research speed, and we already got our military tech, so what we will be doing is we will be going into the Renaissance tree, and we want a little bit more research speed, so I think we're going to make a beeline for university, but also education of the elites is going to free something up for us. Education of the people gives 0.1 progress towards humanist. We currently have a government reform we don't really like very much, and we would like to replace it, but it's giving us the progress towards humanists. Well, it's an okay government reform, but we maybe make the swap here, and this is going to give us an option and or make things a little bit more comfortable for the humanist push. So we are going to make a little bit of a push there for that, and then I think that we will look to push for the monthly diplomats here, and also the march, because this is expensive for us. After that, we can unlock our Venetian palaces, as well as urban building cost, and so this will serve us pretty well in this Renaissance tree. We'll also pick up a little bit of crown power, which is nice, and also cultural influence, which will help us annex people faster. Incidentally, let's take a look at the university. It's an important building. This is going to give us a local max literacy for burghers. At this point, for our current setup, burghers are a little over 10% of our overall pops, so we could also think of this as 1% just overall max literacy. It's going to give local pop promotion speed, and it's also going to give quite a bit of cultural influence. And this is going to help us to integrate subjects faster, and also it's going to allow us to use and build spy networks faster, which we're kind of using currently to make religious wars CBs. That's how we got our CB on Tunis. Currently it is a religious war CB, and that's how we're going to get another CB on Tlemcen here. Alright, so we waited so that we could recruit one more unit, and we're also going to hire some mercs, some Catalan crossbowmen, which are an interesting unit from Age 1, which have 50% more unit strength, so they'll do 50% more damage, and they have a lot of initiative, and also some horsemen also have a lot of initiative. We're hoping that our mercenaries just get into battle first and die first. That way we won't have to pay them anymore. So we will recruit these guys up. We will recruit them up right over there in Verona, and then we will have a little bit of a declare war on Tunis here. We are going to do the religious war CB. We have enough navy. They don't have a navy to really oppose us, so we will be able to have some good moves. And we won't call in Milan, because Milan will be stone useless without any boats. We really need to make the landing stick, because it's not like we can just retreat back and do this type of thing very easily, because they are far away from us, and so that's why we are going for a little bit of maybe an overkill thing, but it's more of a certainty thing in terms of making sure that we have enough units. Whoops, we forgot to raise the levies. Let's raise the levies, sans the ones that are over here. So we have our opening salvo battle. If this goes poorly, we will just hire more mercs, but that will be expensive. We're also hoping that the levies aren't as strong as they were on the previous build, because levies absolutely bogged any sort of merc or regular, and they have more levies than us by virtue of having more pops. So let's take a little bit of a look. Oh, we're dusting them up. We love to see it. They're just absolutely wrecked. Perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. We got in nice and fast. We overwhelmed the front with our levies getting in quite quickly with their initiative. Or sorry, not our levies. Our mercs getting in with the initiative. And then we're able to do some work there. We're still making decent money. It's not like we overhired the mercs or anything like this. We're very comfortably able to do this. And so what we're going to do is I think we're going to try and siege our way over, going for the kind of location capital or the provincial capital of these places, so that we flip the entire thing as we work our way over to our subject. So we'll go here and then there, and then get on over with our subject and link up so that we have an 8k stack, something like this, and so be a little bit less vulnerable to if Tunis groups up with their subjects. Now we're gonna go and take a little bit of a look at the wider Mediterranean and try and pick off any fleets with our navy here. So we did get our wings clipped a little bit, and we got our unit caught kind of in transition on bad terrain in a fog of war thing, and so we lost a battle here. And I actually really don't like going for 100 war score. I think that, generally speaking, you kind of want to do some small ball chip damage. We should have done our peace deal before we got clipped, because there's a fairly good peace deal for us, and right now we're just trying to grab as many pops as possible, because we need around 250,000 or 300,000 more pops in order to be able to flip Sunni. And so what we're going to do is we're going to grab all these locations. Our heuristic here is we're just grabbing the locations kind of close to Tunis, and we're grabbing the locations with the most pop possible that are all kind of next to each other, and eventually we're going to turn these into subjects. But for now, we're going to call this a day. We're going to have a bunch of pops, and also the antagonism, nobody here cares except for Tunis and the other Sunni nations, and so our antagonism that we generated up there isn't going to matter here. So we're going to peace out. We're going to watch our pop go from 524,000 up here to sorry, we have to wait for a month to pass. 773,000. So this means that if we take a look at the religious map mode, we have really bad religious unity, but more importantly, we have 31% Sunni pops, so we're pretty close to being able to flip. Now we are still going to have some of these mercs as well for the next fight. Are we? Maybe we won't. All our mercs died. Actually, according to plan, we lost basically no pops in that war. We have coming in here a Casus Belli generating, and we're going to keep the spy network in. The reason we're going to keep the spy network in, we want to discover areas down here, and we're going to use them to steal the maps. So, another thing that we've done is we have given a privilege to the commoners, and then we are actually taxing them to an equilibrium of 60%. The reason being is that we are hoping to slow down any rebel progress, because we can't have a separatist movement here while it's landlocked. That'll just be really uncomfortable and annoying, and so we just have to make sure everything's stable for at least an extended period of time, and we'll also reap a little bit of benefit from having additional satisfaction. You can see our satisfaction is sky high with this strategy, and this will make our prosperity gain pretty quickly, and it's not that expensive on our overall bottom line, considering we don't really generate that much money from the commoners anyways. Most of our expense here is cost of court because we did dip under 96 by virtue of the 5 it costs to give out a privilege. So the malice from the locations being conquered is really kind of stymieing our plan to low tax the guys. Just to be clear here, what we're having is the separatism modifier is particularly nasty. Generally, we want to just as quickly as possible release these guys as subjects. We just have to hold on to them though, because we need that 40% Sunni pop. So with our new government reform slot, we have several choices that I think are somewhat reasonable. We're going to be going harbor administration, but I just wanted to touch on some of the other ones that are pretty good. Sortition, getting the 5% tax efficiency is pretty good. If we had a bigger proportion of our income from taxes, this would maybe be reasonable. Council 40 will be good once we have a lot more crown power modifiers, because plus 25% trade capacity, that's a pretty one. Here we have plutocratic ethos. The thing we would care about is this legislative efficiency. That's decreased antagonism. Also, parliamentary support makes our parliaments easier. Also, we only have 0.05 progress towards plutocracy, so we are actually throttled there despite being plutocratic ourselves. Bank ledger system would allow us to mint more. It would double our minting income. Currently, from minting, we're getting 10. We can mint up to 0.10. Which is how much more that would give us, so in terms of what we can mint. And also, it gives us a little bit of progress towards capital economy, but our capital economy is like 85, so we're not going to be able to push it more in there. Trade office network is probably not worth going, although it sounds like it might be, and Diplo traditions is attractive as well because that diplomatic reputation. In the long term, I think this will actually be good, and I think that we're going to swap onto this sometime soon, but for now we'll gain harbor administration. Also, we get peace of mind with harbor administration. This monthly progress towards naval is going to make it very, very difficult for us to accidentally bink something that will deny us progress towards naval. You can see right now we barely have a progress towards naval, and part of that is that we are, have an army maintenance, we are drilling our army, and we want to be able to do these things, and so the progress towards naval is going to help us out in that regard. We might be switching this one up reasonably soon, and be going for the one that is going to give us diplomatic reputation. I think that, especially with Diplo ideas in this age, the Diplo rep is going to be really nice, because that basically locks in Diplo hegemon in the next age. Not sure what happened here, but we lost our spy network and RCB. I think maybe he lost to a rev and we just didn't notice it was happening. The rev for that should be brewing for this isn't too big yet, so I think we're in fine shape. We just have to try and get this war off before this little place revs, because otherwise it's landlocked and we can't get to it. So we just unlocked for ourselves Education of the People law. We're going to go with that, and we are going to get a little bit of extra progress towards humanists. It will take a while for that law to sink in, and so we won't have all the progress towards humanist immediately, but after it's done going in, we will really strongly consider switching religious tolerance. Not that it's awful, but over onto diplomatic traditions, especially because diplomatic capacity is a resource that is about to get squeezed on us. We are almost to the point where we can't support what we have, although we could forego one of our alliances. With those alliances, we do want to be creating favors. We are creating favors on Milan, so we can break Milanese alliances, and we allied up Aragon specifically because we want to be able to break their alliance with Sicily, which we might look to do before we flip Sunni. That way they are easier to go in on, and they don't have Aragon kind of looking over their shoulder. Eventually we will want to fight Aragon, though, because we do have to go after Sardinia here, so that is going to be in the cards. We also continue to expand out these foreign trade buildings, giving us a little bit more edge over the market. We could actually take a look at how we're doing in the Naples market, which we only have those foreign trade buildings for the most part, and we have 15 trade capacity, or 15 trade advantage, and 5 trade capacity, and for those trades, for our trades in there, 23 trade capacity, just 5 available. The auto needs to pick up what's going on, and we do have a smattering of good trades, but let's actually take a look at the broader market and see how much trade value the top end is getting here. So let's look at trades, and let's not look at our own trades, but just all the trades in general. So the best trades, even from Naples, are starting to be not super valuable. So I don't think it's worth for us to super invest here in order to gain control of these top tier trades. And if we take a look over here in Barcelona market, we could see maybe some other trades. It looks like these trades don't have the same top end that we are kind of expecting to see. Taking a look here, it's better top end than what we're experiencing though, and we're also having a lot of money, and so there's good enough opportunities. The wood drop is coming along pretty nicely. I think we were buying something between 30 and 40, or we had between 30 and 40 burgers importing, and now we only have 13. And you can see a lot of these locations that are producing the most wood are our locations as we look to bring down the wood price in the Venetia market. Alright, we have an easy layup war with Tlemcen, and this ought to give us over 50% Sunni pops. We'll just have to wait a couple months for it to register that we have indeed all these pops. Mashallah, it's time for us to flip Sunni here. We have over 50%, and this is the requirement. It is actually just going to end our alliances straight up. That actually... We will wait to flip Sunni until we get enough favors from Aragon in order to break their alliance with Sicily, and then we're gonna flip. Alright, just like a G, we're gonna move in real silence like lasagna. We're gonna make a bunch of galleys here, and then the plan is to declare war on Sicily, pull Milan into it, and then flip Sunni so that everybody's angry after making them break their alliance first. I think that we're not going to wait. This will give us a little bit of dev and a little bit of centralization. Hurrah! I don't think we're going to wait for all the favors to come in, because I think actually this is really expensive, us waiting in this way, because this is decreasing our crown power. Us having all these locations, actually we're still above 26. Well, this is decreasing our crown power, us having all these random locations which we want to release as subjects, but I guess we could wait a little bit. We don't want to wait too long. I think we're going to maybe send them money for favors, and I just wanted to highlight that this is something you can do. If we send them a gift of 292 ducats, they'll give us 5 favors, and so this will speed things up a little bit, although we are going to get squeezed on diplomats if we do that, so maybe it's just kind of a wash, and we're just supposed to wait. I think we're generating, only 0.28 a month? Yeah, we're going to send them some money for favors. Yeah, this tech is so nice for us here. We're getting effectively double our marginal diplomats. We can probably rake back this a little bit to save some money if we want. Currently, we're gaining our Republican tradition. That's why it looks like we're making no money, because this is going to be expensive until we hit the cap. But we get this event, Venetian statutes, where we can pass the statutes and gain some Republican tradition. Wow, minus 12 stab. Whatever, we'll pay for that. Oh, plus 20 centralization. So that's going to be fantastic. I'm pretty sure we're clicking that button. We're certainly not going 20 towards decentralization, so we'll pass and enforce them, and we will have very close to 100 centralization now. 96.57. That's going to be a lot of crown power. That's going to be a lot of proximity cost. And that's probably going to be... We're not going to do it because we want to maintain positive stab. But that's maybe a point where we could consider going back on Council of 40. Because we now have a lot of crown power modifiers. We're staying comfortably over 25. And 25% trade capacity is pretty nice. Sortition's nice too, though. And doesn't give that crown power malice. Alright, it's time. See, it says that Aragon won't join, but honestly what happens most of the time is they have favors on Aragon and they can just pull Aragon in anyways, and so this X is not a very good indicator of whether or not we will have them in the fight, but we have 20 favors now with Aragon, so we're going to isolate them from their allies and force them to cancel. Oh wait, what's this? Why can't we cancel the alliance here? Hold up. What? Alright, apparently they're not allies. A little bit of an oversight on my part. They are receiving a guarantee from Aragon, which is not cancelable in this way. However, we will declare and see what we can do. We do have a much bigger navy that we built now that we built one, and we do have a bigger army if Milan joins us, which they are going to be joining us, and so we will go for our parliamentary claim on them. And we might even just take stuff off of Aragon too. Maybe this is actually going to be better for us because we can take stuff off of Aragon, and it looks like we're so much stronger. So we will go with this war. Aragon is likely to join, but that will be fine for us. We will raise our levies and get ready for battle. This is actually very cute. You know what? I realized since Sicily isn't an ally of Aragon, they probably can't use the use favors to call the war action, and so Aragon's just straight up not going to help them because this interaction's not available. If we had a diplomat, we could call Aragon into the war, but that's gratuitous and overkill. Alright, so we're going to take Tunis because we won it, and it's a market center, very valuable. We're going to take this side of Sicily mainly because we want to deny the strait to Naples, because otherwise Naples is going to go in on Sicily. And then we're going to take a little bit of Pisa so that we can release Pisa, which will have claims on the rest of Pisa. So that is going to be it. Then we're going to get some war reps. Some people are going to be upset. That's okay. And then we are now... Oh, no... False alarm, we can still flip Sunni. We were releasing all this as subjects anyway, so I don't know why I panicked there. In my head I was like, no, we got more Catholic provinces, this is the end. But we will flip Sunni here. This will break our alliances, which is going to, unfortunately, leave us with a bunch of diplo capacity for new subjects. Hey, hey, hey. And so, and by unfortunately, I mean this is kind of all according to plan. So, now we are going to need to release new subjects. Managed subjects, we are going to be, sorry, not managed, create subject, historic subject, Pisa. Perfect. Vassal. Oh, can we not... Do we not have the tech yet for... Hold up. I thought we had already researched the tech for marches. Oh, did we decide to delay it? So, having a thought on whether or not we want Algeria as a march is an interesting idea, because they're so far away and we're not going to annex them anytime soon. Let's take a look at our subjects, and take a look at if they have a disloyalty from strength of all countries versus overlords. So this is the thing we are concerned about. We might want to wait until we have a march available, and so I think we adjusted our tech. Yeah, we are going to adjust our tech, so we're going to research marches, and we're going to release Algeria as a march instead of as, and they're a decent kind of location for a march, instead of as a vassal. Other than that, we will release some other people as vassals, so let's kind of get into that. Create subject, custom subject, we're going to do these guys? I don't think that is... Yeah, okay, that is a different province. We are specifically... We could... Colonial nations, very, very cute. Colonial nations are very strong, but we eventually want to move here, and you can't annex a colonial nation, so we are going to be doing that. We are going to look for someone who is preferably female, and then max stats, because otherwise we can't really make use of females, so that's going to be good. And then we will give them a little bit of territory, and then... we are going to laugh because we have way less... Once we release these guys, we will have way less Sunni. Currently, we still have a ton of Sunni. And then we'll release these guys as a subject. We'll also start converting over here and these sorts of things. Now, you might notice that our income has gotten absolutely wrecked. A big part of that is we now get no tax income from the burghers. What? That's because every burgher member who is not of our faith, which is all of our burghers, now belong to the Dhimmi estate. But the Dhimmi estate... boy, can we tax them a whole lot more than we can the burghers. The burghers' max tax is 16%. The Dhimmi max tax is 46%. So we maybe have some incentive to actually just keep all of them as Dhimmi. That way we can tax them a whole lot more in terms of the max tax. And so I think we might end up doing that. But what we're going to do now is we also have the new Dhimmi estate, and we have to hand them out privileges. They are very weak, and every time we hand out a privilege, a lot of power or a lot of negative satisfaction is going to go towards the burghers. We might have to wait a couple months, because I think the Dhimmi should actually have a lot of power, and the burghers should be a lot weaker, considering the burghers don't have 32,000 members anymore. That 32,000 membership, that is a lie. Those are revoked. I said those are revoked. I said those are revoked. We will try saving and reloading. Alright. It seems to be a little bit of a weird bug, On a closer examination, Barcelona is getting their burgers counted for us. I think this has something to do with our overseas ownership buildings, but in any case, what we will have to do then is make them really upset every time we give out a privilege, which is unfortunate. But the first things we are going to give out are going to be the things that give us tolerance of heathens, which is now all of our Catholic pops. And so something like this is going to give us tolerance of heathens. There you can see the hit to our burgers satisfaction, but we will give that out. I think we're also going to give out the other tolerance of heathens. With all this, we will have a pretty solid tolerance of heathens anyways, and so we will do that as well. We also unlock new techs on the tech tree. Let's just double check what our current tolerance is. So our tolerance of heathens is just 53, right? 0.53 right now. It's almost the same as the tolerance of heretics. And converting pops is maybe not even going to be important, especially as we get more techs in the tech tree. We should now have, yes, we have the Islamic tech tree here, and so we will go for tolerance of true faith. Probably. I guess it's not really that big a priority at this point in time, and then we will unlock on the tree all of the Islamic tech as well. We're going to double check on the free side of the tree, because I do think there are some goodies that we are interested in to get. Alright, so we're adding a few things to the queue here. Loyalty of subjects and subject opinion, kind of something we're interested in, considering they're disloyal, they're mad at us, they are in fact Catholic, a lot of them, and so we are having to pay more on the slider than we'd like, and then come in for the Republican tradition. For each point one of Republican tradition you use or get, you will save a whole lot on the expense of this cost of court slider, which is our most expensive slider, and so that is going to help us out. Then we'll come back into the banking tree, and we'll go for entry pot, which is going to be, it can only be built in the market capital, but now we have 3 market capitals with Tunis, 4 if we were to keep the one in Algeria, but I don't think we're going to keep that. And then we're going to grab the maritime presence, because we are going to need to start working on that in order to project control over to our kind of far-flung empire. And then pound lock canals are going to be good for a similar thing, minus proximity costs, can build these in cities on the coast, and so we are probably going to be looking to upgrade to cities soon, especially as we get the price of lumber down. And then I think that we have one more thing we were going for. We're going for rag paper. That was the other thing we were going for. A little bit better alternative for paper production that does not involve quite as much lumber, in order to save on the lumber and try and drop the price of it. Something we maybe should have done but didn't is spam a bunch of cathedrals before we got flipped our religion, because we can't build them after, and this gives quite a pretty bit of local pop conversion speed. As it stands, we will have access to the building the madrasa, which is going to give extra conversion speed, extra flat conversion speed. Oh, they changed it. It used to give a big fat amount of flat conversion speed. Very fascinating. Are we getting extra conversion speed off the Sufi Lounge? I don't think we can build that unless we go mysticism or something like that. But in that case, we're going to spam the madrasa wherever we have an urban location, and that will help us out. Incidentally, we also are doing pretty well on... that's not the thing. We're doing pretty well on proximity. Now that we're starting to push the maritime presence, you can see here we do have 94 here. We have 100 here, and so our ability to project proximity to Pola, for example, going through this segment only costs 5, because we have this really big reduction from maritime presence, having a ton of it. And so it's being reduced by 95%. And then coming in here, it's only 5 because of the harbor capacity we have, including harbor administration, the government reform we put in. And so it has 91 control, which is a very nice amount. And that's even with probably satisfaction's a little bit low, because we did flip the wrong religion in terms of what they care about. No, satisfaction's still pretty high. Okay, fair enough. And so we are doing pretty well in the control department. Every coastal place, or a lot of the coastal places, at least to this C zone, all have 100 control, and so this is very nice. After a little bit of reflection, I think we actually just don't even want to convert anyone. If they stay dimmy, we will be able to tax them a ton. Now, to be fair, what we probably want is either them all dimmy or all burgers. But in this instance, they're basically all burgers. We're still going to max tax the burgers because we have so much satisfaction equilibrium. But what we're going to do, I mean, it's really unfortunate that the burgers have so much power because they really take a satisfaction hit. But I think we're going to give out Abrahamic communities. Oh, brother, minus 33%. What's that, dude? Oh, that's so much. That's so much. We're gonna have to wait. For our parliaments, because of what's going on with the burgers, the little bit of a weirdness, we are going to be super aggressive about picking this parliament up, because this is going to give us, for the duration of parliament, plus 2.5% estate satisfaction recovery, and that's going to be really, really valuable for making us recover at a decent clip, at a reasonable clip. We will be getting 3.7 over the course of 6 months, so around 20 satisfaction, and so this is going to make it so that we can slot in some more dimmy stuff a little bit easier. We did slot in the Abrahamic communities, so we are kind of locked in on our taxation plan, our eventual taxation plan, where we can tax them a whole lot, but for now, we will keep the taxes low, and we will be doing our parliament stuff. We have mixed institutions as an option here. That's a little interesting. I think we're going to pass. We also have a couple laws that we have to put in here for us being now SUNNI, where we can go for lenient taxation, give extra estate satisfaction equilibrium, lose some tax efficiency, move towards traditional economy, or, and I think we're kind of more inclined to do this, tax farming, which is going to give us extra tax efficiency. Tax efficiency is a really strong modifier. I don't know if it's best right now. We're currently experiencing some stab issues. I can't imagine what might have destabilized our country. And then we're going to allow slave religion here. We could force conversions, but this is going to give us some humanist progress. And so in this case, we will really, really have a lock-in on that and not necessarily need this religious tolerance, but man, tolerance of heretical beliefs is 5 satisfaction. So why don't we check our satisfaction? Our satisfaction's kind of okay. It's not the best here. The thing is we would lose out on some tolerance. We're like checking our tolerance. Is our tolerance okay? Our tolerance would go to negative 5.4 if we slot this out. So it is definitely one to consider. Alright, this is something I hadn't really paid that close attention to, is which privilege we're giving out actually matters a lot for how upset they get, which I suppose makes some sense. And so maybe it's that they care about certain values, and if you push those values away, they get upset about it, and something like this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cruise through and look, hey, which ones of these are going to give the most satisfaction, because this leads to more tax for us, while upsetting the burgers the least. And so I think we're going to get the Demi levy size. Oh, geez, we actually really want Demi levy size. I didn't even consider that. Do we actually have levies? Okay, we do have levies. Just making sure. And that levy size is actually, in that case, it's going to be pretty good for us. Let's see how much this goes up by. We're at 6.8k now, and if we do this, what do we go up to, or what do we stay at? 7.6k. That's pretty good. That's pretty nice for us to be getting there. We annexed Tlemcen and feed them to our subjects here, and also we are going to finish pushing 100 towards centralization, courtesy of Expand Gravel Road Network in the last parliament of this episode here. We have finally done it. We now have no burger imports, and in fact, we have burger exports. Now, these burger exports will contribute less to the price because of the mechanic of effective price, or effective supply and effective demand, where trades are worth less, and so the demand that is created from exports is worth less when it comes to weighting the price, and so now you can see the price is just starting to dip below a 1.5 or base price after this long concerted effort, which means we are going to be able to collapse the price of lumber soon, especially as we start and continue to add more of it, and you can see it's trending down basically for the first time after just being completely stalled out at baseline as a consequence of the burger imports, and so this is going to be nice for us. We do see something that's a cause for concern, though, which is that we only have a net positive of 94 food in the market, which means that we are very, very vulnerable to a drop in food supply. As the food supply drops down, the price will go up dramatically, and this means anyone who is who has a negative provincial food modifier or situation, which we have a very significant one in the Venice province, is going to start having to pay a whole lot for food. Currently we pay for food, but it's at this 0.01 price, and this will increase dramatically as this kind of starts to diminish. And so we have something set up for this, is this province of Este, which is going to be a breadbasket province for us. Taking a look at the rivers, we see that there is a river here in Este, and also there is going to be, it's not going to be a river that would be useful for a Pound Lock Canal, an infrastructure building that has to be built on a river, because when we trace our proximity, we're going to go through Rovigo into Legnago, and so this isn't really on the way. And so what this means is we can build irrigation here, which we've already kind of gotten started on this because we knew we probably wanted to show this off at some point in time. As a breadbasket location, we are going to be stacking, hey, local food production percentage modifier. But also, since it is rural and we are going to leave it rural, we can build these farming villages. And these farming villages are going to be giving us a few things. One, local food capacity, that's pretty nice. That makes it smoother in regards to running out of food because you have more time before your buffer depletes, but also local food production percentage, right? So we have a total of 26 additional food production percentage. Why don't we add a few more of these, especially because both of these buildings are employed by peasants, meaning we don't have to care about qualifications whatsoever. Let's also add a couple of wheat RGOs. This is going to give flat food. The RGO is going to give, here, let's see if we can find the... There we go. The RGO itself is going to give 8 flat food. And so this is one of the flat food sources. We also have set up just a little bit of the other flat food sources. This isn't profitable enough to employ, but we could subsidize it if we get desperate. This is going to produce food 0.3 per level of the building at kind of base values. And then the sheep is going to produce it's going to produce half a wool at base values, and then it is going to produce 5 food per wool, so 2.5. So this is another source of flat food. Now this isn't very profitable right now because the wood's not very cheap and the wool is a little bit cheap, but I just wanted to have both of these kind of set up. That way we could show that we could get a lot of sources of flat food. We could build 10 levels of the sheep. That means we could get 50 food here, and we could build 10 levels of the fruit, so we could get 30 flat food, and then we could build 11 levels of this, so that's 88 flat food, so that's something a little bit shy of 200 flat food, and then even a little flat food coming from the farming village, where each level will be giving, let's take a double check, for the farming village, I think each level gives half of one. Can we not hover it? There we go. Each one will give half a cattle, which will give 4 food. And so if we could build 10, that's another 40 food. So like 230 food. And then as we stack a bunch of percentage modifiers, which I think we could get around 100 plus 100%, that's going to be several hundred food coming out of this province, not just this 69. Here you can see it's... that's not a satisfaction. The food we are getting in this province is plus 31. It's 60 of it's coming from this location, and already it has plus 117% food. So this is generally a problem for Italy as it relates to the RGOs, and is something to keep in mind because you have a lot of food up in the north, but there's absolutely no food in the middle, and generally speaking, when you have a lot of urbanization, which Italy does, you tend to run out of food very, very easily, and so this is something we've been keeping an eye on, knowing that this is going to be the case, and also Este being a very special province because it doesn't get in the way, and it's a river province that you don't actually want to turn into a city for infrastructure reasons, and it's got a 8 food RGO, which is a relatively rare thing. We'll also throw one of these in here, even though it hasn't come down in price in terms of the expand, because wood is still expensive. We'll just add it in here. And so, did want to show this off. We are keeping an eye on this, and that will probably, what we just added there is probably going to give us enough buffer, but we're going to make sure we keep an eye on this pretty close, because this is the first time that we've noticed we're relatively close on the food here. Alright, so taking a closer look at this kind of strangeness that we have, where we have a ton of overseas contributing. My understanding is there is supposed to be some overseas contributing. It just shouldn't be the entirety of the burgers there, which is the case with Barcelona, right? But This is particularly acute. You can see here there is employed 5,150 burgers with 5,845 in total, and in terms of what is being contributed here, wait, that doesn't even make any sense. It's halfway in between. 54-44. Alright, well, the point we were going to make, though, is that we actually have way less of any pop. I thought it was just the burgers and the commoners that got contributed to the dhimmi, but it actually looks like it's just every single pop that's not the correct religion. And so, if we take a look over here, basically every single one of our locations here, and this is really cute, nearly all of our locations is going to have almost all the power in the dhimmi, or in terms of tax-based contribution, but also it would be for power. You can see that there are a couple exceptions where I suppose we have some amount of dhimmi nobles, Venetian nobles in here. So these are going to be Sunni nobles, and so that will be the case. But for the most part, it's actually a very interesting thing where we are getting to tax basically the estates and not actually need to put the estate things up. We actually shouldn't even be taxing this guy at all. We would prefer the 1% here. We stopped taxing the commoners. We would prefer just to have this 90% satisfaction and have extra food production and stab cost. We are going to tax these guys because their equilibrium's 100 anyways, but this is, it doesn't matter how much we tax them because we're not really getting anything. So now we have this very interesting thing where we are Sunni. 100% of our pops basically are going to be Catholic, and so this means that we only have to tax the dhimmi estate, which is not exactly what we were aiming for. It's something we were kind of familiar with because we played Delhi, but overall, this is kind of good for us considering how much the burgers were getting, and they have a max tax rate of 15%. To be fair, they shouldn't be this powerful because if there were actual proper nobles and actual proper clergy, they wouldn't be this powerful, and this is one of the contributing factors to max tax. If we look at the modifier, the fact that they are powerful is decreasing the max tax. Base rate is 30%, but the dhimmi, our tax rate, for the dhimmi is 44%, so it's so much higher than our max tax for burgers, so we would actually much rather just tax the dhimmi into oblivion. And we can see here, we're actually making a really decent chunk of money here with this Sunni flip. Kind of interesting how this is all shaking out here. I still think that it should be a smaller amount, but kind of a little bit interesting. The third one, the third most populous one is Tunis. It's just that Tunis has no control, and so it's not really giving anything to the tax base, and so that's why we don't see any sort of tax-based contribution from like the nobles. There's nobles in Tunis here, and the nobles in Tunis are in fact a big portion of this tax base, as are the burghers, but they're splitting zero tax base because there's no control here, and we can't build a bailiff here because it's overseas. We are looking to kind of sometime in the near future accept Tunisian, and then be able to core some of these locations, so we'd get like 10-15 control, something like this, but as of right now it's giving us absolutely nothing. We're going to do something that we've done in several of our other runs, and we maybe should have done this run. We're going to close the Carpenters Guild. We do not want more Carpentry Guild because they eat the most wood out of any sort of production building. And then we are going to do something we did a little bit earlier in this episode, is we're going to find some trade routes here. We're going to look at our current trades, sort by the least profitable, and cancel a few of these. And then we're going to look to import any type of furniture. And so hopefully we can resolve this by just importing. You can see the burgers are currently exporting, so that might just all work out. And what we're going to do is we're just going to import from a couple locations. We're just going to kind of decrease the amount that is getting imported in a few of those. So we're importing from 3. That way we don't kind of over-import from individual locations. I think these will be relatively profitable on the furniture, and then we won't have that furniture demand in the market as we kind of continue to try and push the lumber in the market. Coming back to the lumber, we do see the burghers are starting to export really large amounts. And so we're kind of waiting for this to fall. We see it fall a little bit more. The burghers are being really sticky about this and continuing to export. We might have invested way more resources into this than we should have. And maybe we should have just cut our losses a while ago and started to just omega spend stuff. Because we've been waiting to upgrade some of these locations to cities. But we could see the discounts starting to head in. Even with just a very small dip in price, we're getting minus 5%. So maybe this is worth it. And so, because this is going to save us several hundred on these city upgrades, which is kind of what we have coming in line next. We've upgraded more or less the best industries. We have maxed out or are in the process of maxing out. And so what we want is the additional plus 5 levels from the city, which will allow us to continue to build the best things. And then with those best things, also push a higher economies of scale level, not just in the new buildings we're building, but on all of the buildings we already have here. So we hit the 50-year mark, kind of had a few main focuses. One was kind of the early expansion, trying to do it relatively efficiently, get a nice little power base for ourselves. We have the integration of Ferrara coming up soon, and this will be a really big power spike because a lot of this, it will be relatively high proximity for us, and so we will have relatively high control in these locations. That was kind of thing one. The more obvious and in-your-face thing is that we flipped SUNNI, and now we have the very strangeness of the dhimmi tax just kind of being really, really strong for us because we are taxing the dhimmi way more than we can tax the burghers, and all of the burgher income is effectively going to the dhimmi. So that is kind of a little bit of a strangeness, although we are having way less satisfaction as a consequence. The burghers otherwise would be trending towards super high satisfaction, and we would have really high satisfaction locations. This would be nice for prosperity, and so we don't have that going on, so that is a little bit of a downside, but overall, this actually seems pretty strong. Was not anticipating or really fully thought through all of that. And then the other thing is just generally in terms of the open, we really focus on pushing values, and in particular we got centralization to 100. Humanist, we started out with a really strong humanist thing, so a big part of the interesting thing about Venice is trying to lock in your humanist trend, and then you click a few events and then you're at 96 humanist, which is normally very hard to push, especially this early in the game. We have a little bit of a trend towards plutocracy. I haven't really gotten too many opportunities of events. I think we started with 40. We have really deliberately pushed conciliatory for anyone who's like, why hasn't he rivaled anyone? Because this gives you progress towards conciliatory, and we just recently kind of maxed out our progress towards conciliatory in terms of what we could push both with the 0.4 trend and also with the our cabinet. In fact, we were actually holding off on things like expansionist zealotry, which would have been useful for us for the, well, actually, no, the war on different religion cost isn't too terribly useful because it's not actually a war score, but this would have been nice to get the satisfaction, but we were holding off because we didn't want the progress towards belligerent. So we have that. We have pushed naval, went a little bit out of our way to make sure that we didn't decay down on that. Capital economy starts out high. We made sure that it was locked in and pushed it a little bit. And then we kind of were indifferent to communalism versus individualism. I think we might try and push communalism a little bit for the estate satisfaction equilibrium because there's not too many sources of estate or satisfaction equilibrium for the dhimmi, and so sometimes they can be a little bit tricky to tax, and so just generic satisfaction equilibrium or generic tax are going to be really strong for us in general because there's not a lot of just random modifiers for the dhimmi. So we actually might stay on favor of the ruler, even though it gives us this negative satisfaction equilibrium, which we don't like, because this max tax, this applies to the dhimmi, and so it's hard to get max tax for the dhimmi, so that is going to be useful for us. Also, one kind of strange thing in the values, this is just a bug, I think. I don't think we're supposed to gain access to synthesize, but we do have access to synthesize. Normally, you're supposed to have some sort of locations over here. I think we got this before we flipped to SUNNI, but we haven't pointed it out, but that was a little bit of a strangeness, an aberration, and so, yeah, that's just... I do think, though, that a big chunk of this is a useful template, even if you didn't want to do something weird like flipping Sunni with the intention of eventually forming Carthage, but that's going to be what we are doing. I suppose we maybe take a little bit of a look at Carthage's advances and then round out this episode here. So the main requirement for formables is you have to move your capital to the region, so we've just started a new game as Tunis in order to look at this, but form a new country, and we can see Carthage. Now, Carthage does require a whole bunch of lands, which we are going to be focused on getting, which is basically Sicily and North Africa here. A little bit curious that it doesn't include Sardinia, but okay, fair enough. And it's going to give powerful trade bonuses. We have 10% trade capacity, breadbasket of Rome, that's a little offensive, but okay. Olives output 30%, mercenary maintenance minus 20%, we have shipbuilding speed minus 20%. I don't think Venice has a modifier for that. Sailors plus 20%, so this combined with, I think Venice gets sailors plus 20%, you keep the tech tree of Venice, and you get this stacked on top, which is really what we were looking for. We get Legacy of Hanan for exploration, which is going to be nice. The progress plus 30% is pretty good. We get 20% colonial range, Punic wine trade 30%, global trade, Punic global trade. This was, for a large period of time in the pre-release build, 30%. Now it's 2.5%. And then we have Rule of Sufet, which is 2.02. Nothing too crazy, kind of synergizes with what we have going on in Venice, but is something for us to work towards, and an interesting twist, I think, is what we are going to be playing for. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. If you wanted to support the channel, you can use our affiliate code with Paradox. You just go onto their website and buy the game on that platform. It doesn't give you a discount, but it does send 12% of the sale our way, so this is a really good way to support the channel. You can do it for a pre-order for EU5, you could just do it for a regular order of EU5, and you can also do it for other Paradox products. All of that will work. Other creators have this, so check with other creators if you want to support them instead. Also, if you are not in USD, make sure you cross-reference Steam price, because it can be different from Steam versus the website. But other than all that, we will also have a list of... We will be doing streaming all next week, and we will be releasing tons of videos all next week, or in the next coming days. And so keep an eye out for that if you are interested. I think we're going to be releasing a schedule soon. And other than all of that, y'all have a good one. Bye-bye now.